Welcome to the podcast. It's dedicated to making you a faster cyclist, the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by Trainer Road. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee, and we have a special guest with us in here today, Cliff Bar Racing's Pete Morris.
How's it going?
Going great, man. Also, I should introduce you as Trainer Road's Pete Morris,
Yeah,
too.
I'm both.
Yes, because you're both.
More on the latter now.
Yeah. And our CEO, Nate Pearson.
Hello.
How are you, Nate?
Good.
Good.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing
I just found out you're okay.
Yeah, good to know. Good to know. This is where we answer the cycling and triathlon related questions that you've submitted at trainerroad.com/podcast. Thanks for submitting them. We get a ton of them every week and go through them to build up this list of questions that we go through this week. So we've got a good set of them today. Before we get into things, one thing really quick, an exciting announcement for us. If you go over to forum.trainerroad.com, you can see that we have a new feature that we have in early access, we call it. Nate, do you want to go through and explain it?
I do.
Please go. Please do it.
So it's called Plan Builder, and here's the problem before. Our number one question to support and on the podcast is, how do I adjust my training plan for XYZ? If I didn't have specifically 28 weeks, and also I didn't know which blocks to choose from our training plan.
Which training plan do I pick? In fact, I think if we cut those two questions out of the podcast, we're going to need you guys to submit some more questions.
Well, hopefully this never happens again. I mean, we'll probably answer some for the principal,
of
but
course. Yeah,
guys, we never have to do it again.
It's amazing.
So what it does is you put in your goal events, A, B, and C races, and then it looks at that and builds a plan for you. You can have more time, I think up to 2 years, and it rebuilds things for you and redoes everything. So what we did is we took
amazing.
Chad's brain, we downloaded it, and now he's not here because it just like wiped him out.
That's why
He's just laying in a
Yeah.
bed somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Comatose.
It's like in the Matrix. He's like in a tube, and we just have everything connected. He just stays there now.
So if you want access to this is an early access right now, meaning you cannot, it's not just on the website live. You can either go to your account and it's under profile on the website, or the best way is you go to forum. There's a pinned topic called Introducing Plan Builder, and you go in there and it has some instructions. There are some known bugs. That's why it's early access. So that way you don't report it again. And if you do run into something, please report it in that forum post. We have support people in there, and we have the product manager. It makes it a lot easier, and we're fixing things really fast. So once we get those things done, we'll release it to everybody. And the idea is you just apply it and you train and you
it's
get
amazing.
faster. Yep.
It's so cool.
Super cool positive feedback. We launched it yesterday evening, and there's like, what does this forum post have? 130 comments. My Strava had like 30 comments on it.
Yep.
It's really cool.
Lots of data, math, science research has gone into this sort of thing to give you the best plan that you can have. And it's really, really cool. So
it's so fun to play with, right?
It is. It's like in one respect, it's almost like when you like build and price a car before buying it, and you check out all the options. Like it's kind of fun because you can see what the plan would be if you did low or mid, and then you can go in, for example, and it'll give you like different training phases and bring you in and out of them as is appropriate. And you can say, well, during this phase, I want to work out on these days. And I might want to change to be inside or outside on these days. You can change all of that.
You could set it up so
cool.
in April, you're going to start working outside. And then on different days, and then change it back in the fall.
Yep.
The other cool thing is that once you have, so you can see all this too without applying it to your calendar. So you can kind of play with it. But then once you apply it to your calendar, you can change the volume in the middle of it. Yep. So if you go through, let's say, high volume, or you go through low volume, and you decide, I want to switch to medium, you click on the little annotation for that plan when it starts, and you can switch it to medium, which is super
cool.
handy because I think all of us. And that's too. So this could let's say this is build. Build could be a weird 6-week thing rather than a 8-week thing. Which before it was really hard to then reapply it as a medium.
Yeah.
But now you just do a drop down and it changes it for you.
Yeah. So it's no longer are the blocks always going to be X. That the base is going to be always 12 weeks, or build's always going to be 8 weeks. But we use all the data we have and everything else to trend you in the right direction. And it truncates or extends and does all those things so you don't have to worry about it. If you have 2 A races even and they're 8 weeks apart, at least 8 weeks apart, then it will trend you between and kind of bring you down like you need to be brought down, but then build you back up for those sort of events.
If you have 2 A races less than 8 weeks apart, you should rethink it because really you're not going to be able to peak for both.
Yes.
One's technically, like one's a B because you you just don't have enough time to rebuild. After when you Chad would tell you this, but when you taper and you peak, yes, you have high fitness, but you're going to lose some fitness after that.
For sure.
You got to build it back up. Yep.
And the other cool thing that you can add is when you're going through the whole process of adding the plan, you can add your events right then. Or if you already have events on your calendar, it will just pull those in and you have a chance to use those. And if you have B events, you can even check an option that will add openers before those B events.
What?
Which is so cool.
Kaboom.
Yeah, it's so awesome. So then because a C event, you probably don't need openers, right? But a B event, and a C event would be like...
See, that's just the work. I don't care.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? But then a B event, it is nice to be able to, because for example, what if it's on the same course as your A race, it's just a different race. You really want to try to replicate things and kind of prep for that instead of just go into it differently. So it's cool.
Okay, so the last thing that's super cool is... Oh, I forgot it.
Oh, man.
I'll remember it.
There's so many cool things.
I know.
Can I throw in a congratulations really quick?
Do it.
Okay, so this is for...
I remembered it.
Oh, please go.
Okay, so there's a new type of race for stage races or triathlon. So before with triathlon, you put swim, bike, run as like 3 different races. And if you have those on there, you're going to have to change it to this to do Plan Builder to work right. But it's a triathlon, so they're all together, and that makes our system know that this is like one A race. But also for stage races, I put in Cape Epic, and you can put in 8 days, and they're all synced together as a stage race. And then that makes our system know that that's what's coming up.
It's really, really cool.
When you choose your goal event, too, we have a whole bunch of options. So for all your races, you can choose gravel, fondo, cross, all that sort of stuff, road race.
I've already had a few questions from people that are doing like really long, big like races. They're like, which one do I pick if I don't see it in here? And in almost every case, if it's like for example, somebody was talking to somebody just last night about a long endurance race where it's like all day.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it, but long mountain bike race. But it's not like over traditional mountain bike terrain. It's more gravelly terrain.
Yeah.
In that case, pick the gravel scenario. If you have any questions on that sort of stuff, just jump into that forum. And there are already people saying like, if I'm doing this event, how should I classify it?
Yeah.
And people can go there. And
We might. My brain. I'm brainstorming live, so none of this stuff is going to be for sure.
Yeah.
But I think there might be an opportunity for us to put in some extra types of events that then go to something else. So, like I saw someone's like, I'm going to you're going to bike across Wisconsin or something, like or do the Seattle to Portland or what's right?
Yeah,
that would
something like that.
We would most likely check with Chad, but recommend like the Grand Fondo Century kind of thing.
Yep.
But it just helps to have that option because it makes you feel more confident.
For sure.
That could reduce probably questions for people. But yeah, in general, if you're going to do one of those long ones, go towards the Grand Fondo Century gravel. They're all kind of the same energy systems that you're using. Lots of aerobic and lots of sweet spot.
Yeah, because that tends to be the events that kind of that I've seen people bringing up because the rest of them are mostly covered in terms of the shorter races.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
It's very exciting.
Oh, and so we are currently building this on the desktop app. And then, as some of you have known, we are rebuilding our mobile app so that we can build things faster and just modernize it just like we did the desktop app. So that will come after that. That's Pete's job.
Yes, sure is.
So, so once it comes out on the desktop, I'm not sure exactly the date, but I know it's pretty far along. And then, mobile and tablet too.
Because right now you access it at trainerroad.com. So when you log in.
It's only on the website at the moment, and it's only early access. So you have to go to that forum post and enable it.
Yep.
Plan Builder on the forum.
Yep. Cool.
I got it all out.
It's exciting. Yeah, really exciting stuff. Hopefully you people are going on to Trainer Road and checking it out right now. Going
What do you
to
mean,
the
you
forum.
people?
All the folks listening to this.
Okay,
I know. I got the meme there. So a quick congratulations to Justin Brayton. He's podcast listener and professional supercross racers. That's the guys that do motocross inside stadiums. Really intense.
That's super hard.
Really hard stuff. Yeah. So cyclist and podcast listener and Trainer Road user Justin Brayton. He just won his 4th consecutive Australian Supercross Championship, which is pretty dang cool. That's really tough to do. Australians are really fast, and there's a ton of Americans that go down for that. And and he's set up to be like to have a really good year this year. So congratulations. We always like to give shout outs to folks when we hear about their accolades, that sort of thing. Some job postings, Nate?
Yes. We have 4 different jobs available. Product marketing manager. We're still collecting resumes for that. React and React Native engineers. That might be up forever. I don't know, because with growth rate and stuff, like we can't hire fast enough.
Continue to grow.
C# engineer working on data backend stuff, and then customer support team. This is local only, but if you want to join the customer support team and you're local, you can apply for that.
That'd be great. We also need to get some learnings because you raced your bike this past weekend.
I did on Sweet Spot Base. How could you do that?
It's impossible.
It's a big question we get. How can I race while I'm doing base? But you did race.
Especially with a cyclocross race.
I know, right? Because you think it's super high intensity and it doesn't drive well. Because you've been doing just a ton of Sweet Spot work, right?
Sweet Spot Base High Volume 1.
Which
A ton.
I have 3 workouts left, and then I'm on a recovery week.
Ooh, nice. Good job, man.
And yeah, it's starting to get hard because I'm tired.
So it was a cyclocross race, and it was snowy, and it was cold.
Yeah, it was like 24 or something when it started.
Ooh, that's 24 Fahrenheit. So that's probably like what?
-4 Celsius.
4 to 6 C, somewhere around there.
No,
maybe?
negative.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, -4 to
And it
-6.
snowed the previous 2 days.
Yeah. So it was that sort of cross race.
Yep.
What did you learn from that? Can we start out, I guess, on kit? Like, what did you wear?
Yep. So thermal suit. Thermal suits are awesome if you have to ride in the cold.
Like a thermal skin suit?
Yep. And it goes all the way to my arms, so you don't need arm warmers. We used to sell these. Sorry, we don't anymore. But Jack Crew makes a good one, so you can always buy a Jack Crew one like that. It's amazing. I love it in cold weather. I wore like a Rafa base layer thing below it. Those little like fishnet things. I feel like they help me more I always wear them when it's cold. I never wear them when it's hot. I know you're supposed to wear them when it's hot, but when it's cold, I feel like it adds an extra layer of insulation.
And you can't wear wool because you'll get super itchy.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's a bummer.
And then and then I wore wool socks. For some reason, merino wool socks are fine, but on my neck, it itches a bunch.
Really?
Yeah. Huh. I wore a Cliff Bar buff.
Oh, nice.
Like a neck buff thing.
Yeah.
And then a little... one of those headbands for your ears.
Yeah.
Those are so good.
Cold ears?
Cold ears are the worst.
Oh my gosh. It's so painful.
There's a lot of companies that make them though. They're just like little headbands, and I feel like you can leave them in your bike bag.
Yep.
365 days a year. Take them out. And then I wore Rafa I had 2 types of Rafa gloves. I have their winter gloves, which is hard to race in, but for like when you're warming up, I put them on. They're kind of like big ski gloves. And then below that, I had Rafa like windproof gloves.
Yeah.
And my fingers got a little cold while I was racing. I probably could have put a soft cotton glove below that to warm up.
Yeah.
But that was fine.
You lose dexterity then too, so you're kind of walking a line, right?
And it was fine. It wasn't so cold that's exactly what it is. So when it's cold like that, if you have too much glove, you lose dexterity. You don't have enough gloves, you lose dexterity.
Yeah.
So there's like a certain layer. Like people will say, oh, you could have done, or like hot hands or something. But then the feel is different, especially with cross.
Yeah.
It's tough.
A cross race is usually short enough too that like you kind of err on the side of a little less.
Yeah.
In terms of warmth, usually because it's short and super high intensity.
And you need the dexterity, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because you're getting off and you have to do rapid shifts, in different spots. And
I had leg warmers too. And it wasn't so muddy that it was going to like weigh down leg warmers. If it was super muddy, you'd probably want to do like Embro cream or just leave it off because else you're just going to get caked and cold. But it was not like that. So I made a big mistake. I thought the course was going to be... Because it had snowed and the weather, I was looking at like my backyard, I was thinking that it was going to be sloppy, but it was not sloppy at all. So I had 32-inch mud tires that I then took to ride on snow and ice.
And it was like, it's almost like really hard packed with like a little layer of stuff that can stick to you on top, or what was the dirt like?
So it was either covered in snow, and there's parts of the course that never got worn through, or it was like hero dirt.
Okay.
Yeah. Or ice.
Yeah, like concrete, right? Slippery concrete?
Yeah, like when you walk out to your car and then you just suddenly land on the ground.
That sort of stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yikes.
Yeah, so I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, but I should have been much wider. That's why they have fat bikes, right?
Yeah.
I should have been going with our, Riddlers, probably?
Yeah, we have Riddler 45s that are really nice, and then a 37 as well.
So a 37 in the back and 45, and that would have fit on my S-Works Crux.
Yeah, and those have a really nice shoulder. So, like, I find that when conditions are unpredictable, like traction's unpredictable, it's really nice to have a tire that has a good lock-in on the side knobs. Like, it's fine if it's not quite as predictable everywhere else, but when you lean over and it really matters on unpredictable terrain, you want it to grab.
You're like set.
Yes,
right? You
lock in.
Lock into that turn.
Yep, and that's what those Riddlers have because they have the really small, almost like texture on the top. It's hard to call them knobs on the top, but then the side knobs are gigantic and they really kind of bite in. Doesn't make for the fastest rolling because those knobs are always hitting.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you're leaned over on sketchy terrain, it's really nice.
The winner had just giant tires.
Really?
Yeah. But I think... looking up, Canadians could tell me how to do this, but on ice, you want more contact patch, not just like teeny contact patch.
Yeah.
I crashed twice. I did 2 races. One just fell over. Other one was dramatic over the bars into the bushes.
Bike flying up and over you.
Yeah, the bike was on top of me.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, my dropper post broke, so I had to switch things out. I was going to do cameras, but I was going to try the new Heroes.
Oh yeah, because
Just
they
to
might
see-
work pretty well.
They might.
I've
I
used
know.
it. I've used it on short track. It works well.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So it would have been awesome. There would have been a picture of like upside down me in my face.
Sky Nate. Sky Nate. Sky Nate.
So the first race 4-5, I won that one. That was awesome. That was kind of
Nice.
the
Nice
first
job.
time that
Way to go.
I could like look back and like pace myself
Sweet.
based on other people. The second one, I did not win the 3-4. I ended up 3rd out of 3. But there was
Hey.
multiple groups running at the same time, and
Yeah.
based on previous people, so you don't always have to win.
Sure.
Based on people that I've raced before in the 45 plus, I actually stayed with the winners for like a lap, which before would never ever happen because my skills are better. The problem was, the mud. I don't even call it mud. It's like thick sandy
Yeah.
kind of
It's
clay
It
stuff.
like clumps onto
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could not clip in after a few run-ups where they could, and I had to I started banging my foot on the pedal. I think I've seen like Vanderpool do this.
Yeah.
And I had SPDs.
Yeah.
That hurt me a ton in that second race.
This is why a
And
lot
I
of
lost time. I disconnected, and then it's really hard to get back. I don't know if it's all mental, but
This is why you see a
Yeah.
lot of cyclocross racers using egg beaters from
Yeah.
Crank Brothers. I personally don't like the way egg beaters feel. Like they kind of give you like an imprecise feel, like you're standing on top of like a ballpoint pen. They kind of like a lot of like rolling around on that. And then they also just don't give you like a clear indication of when you're in and out. It's kind of just like you're kind of pushing against something, then suddenly you're out. So I don't like that. But they're really good at mud shedding. And even if you have mud packed in, it's pretty easy to clip into them just because they have everything wide open.
Yeah, it's like those 2 bars just force the mud out of the way and lock in.
Yep.
well, the second place guy, the reason why he got second place is he had egg beaters and he couldn't clip in. That's where the winning move happened.
There we go.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's
Even on
certainly-
some days, it's nothing.
Exactly. Like, because I kind of said that, I must admit, I said that in anticipation of people in the live stream right now going, Nate, you should have egg beaters because that's like,
I know.
that's,
I thank you for saying
that's
that.
like they have their day in the sun, so to speak. Whenever, you know what I mean? They're
In the
like,
mud.
now we can say it. And they're good, but it doesn't mean that they're going to fix every problem.
So on this course, an advantage, and the winner did have an advantage on this, is that on a steep section, you could ride it if you had kind of wider tires because it was really loose. But my little 32s just like slipped right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so hard.
And that's where I couldn't clip in afterwards. And he was riding every time, so he didn't run into this problem because we were
Right.
riding.
Yeah. Easy for them, right?
The last part is I did upgrade to Cat 3. I didn't realize I had enough points before to upgrade.
Yeah.
But also, I didn't realize this. If you're Cat 2 on the road, like I am, we're going to talk about that. That's kind of like, that's bittersweet. That's further the podcast. But you can do let's like a transfer or something. So if you're Cat 2, you can be a Cat 3 in
Cyclocross.
Yeah.
Which also, we should cover what else you can do too.
Yeah, you know what? I'm thinking now that maybe that's only cyclocross, so I don't know if I should say that. I don't know if I'm right.
Okay.
But-
Sounds good.
But basically, in mountain biking, you choose whatever you want, right?
It's like who's
It literally
it
says
anyway?
it.
Yeah.
No, I looked up in the rules, and in mountain biking, I could
If you're
register
Cat
as-
2, you can ride whatever you want.
If you're Cat
2
nothing-
on the road, you can ride like whatever you want on
I think
mountain
you
bikes.
can just self-select a mountain bike. We can check if that's
it's
it, but I was
crazy.
reading the rules, and mountain biking, I think you just say, you want to do one, you can race one.
Yeah, USAC, you should consider changing that. That would be nice. Because even like at the national championships level, like this year, for example, we had people that were there where I was like, wow, like there's a huge disparity between the field that we had, like big disparity.
I think it's fun to have the points and upgrade. It gives you something,
Yeah.
right? Like
Gives you something to work toward.
Yeah, exactly.
And also USAC, you're going to have what, like, how many kids are in NICA? Like tens of thousands
Yeah,
at this
tens of
point?
thousands.
You're going to have all those kids like running through like a whole upgrade system and everything else. Might want to think
They have
about
to
the
do more
framework
races,
that
too.
you have. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So don't forget mountain biking. There's something to it. Cool. Well, congratulations, Nate, on winning a cross race. I think that all the work that you've done on bike handling this
yeah,
summer
that's what it was.
has really helped. And you're also you're really fit too. You're really strong.
Thank you, Jonathan.
So yeah.
I didn't have the dropper post, and if I would have had that, it'd be a lot better because cornering when you're so high up is tough, and if you just get down a little bit, it's amazing.
Can I anticipate something in the comments again really quick? people saying that a dropper post isn't needed for cyclocross.
It's not needed.
It's not needed.
I won.
But you know what?
It helps.
It helps. And especially, and not everything is created equal. Like a person that's really short
might not need the dropper post.
Average height, they don't need it nearly as much as somebody like you because your wheelbase is what it is. And it's not that much different proportionally to what I'm riding, right? But your height is hugely different. Like your center of gravity is really high.
And where your hands are.
It helps a lot.
If you look where my saddle is compared to where my handlebars are,
Yes.
and then other people, they're like even.
Yeah.
I can't drop that far.
I can ride with Nate in a pack, and I don't have to worry about clipping bars. I just go underneath his bars with my bars. It's crazy. So it's so even
Just like
though
mountain biking, it is not required.
exactly,
but
it just helps.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And we actually have a video on how we rigged up dropper posts with mechanical drivetrains with 1x drivetrains, so that you have on the left side you have your shift paddle lever. And you basically just, and producer Tucker, I'm sure we'll put this into the forum. You can just search on this one for episode 235 and you'll be able to find it. But we made it so that when you press that lever in, it engages your dropper post. Then you don't have to like rig up anything that's, not meant to be there or anything else. So that's a good way to do it. Let's get into Peter's question. Not yours, actually.
Different Peter.
Yep, different guy. Says, hey guys, amazing podcast. I've only been cycling for about 4 years and started Trainer Road a year or so ago. The Trainer Road podcasts have assisted me in many ways on and off the bike. My issue is I am struggling to keep up with my weekly group ride, which comprises 25K warm-up, relatively easy spin, then 2 minutes rest. This seems like really organized for most group rides.
Yeah.
I think of like our group ride, and if we had any sort of structure like this, it would not be respected.
Rules don't matter.
2 minutes rest, guys. It would not happen. That's when everyone would attack. He says, then it's a smash fest, all out, as fast as you can go, and you just return on the 25Ks that you went out on. He says it's slightly undulating, but mostly flat. It averages about 45 kilometers per hour on the return, with an initial burst hovering around 50 kilometers an hour. So that's a quick,
fast.
spirited group ride, as they say, right? The bunch size averages about 30 riders and he says with several toward the front, pulling turns, the middle of the group just keeping up and just riding. And he says, but I'm usually the last rider just trying to hold on for as long as I can. I'm concerned that if I start further up in the group, example, like the middle, I'll drop off because I'll cause others to drop off. Forgive me. And that wouldn't be fair to them. And he mentions the fact that average TSS for him for this ride is about 100. So it's basically an all-out effort, right, for him. So he says, I'm 55 years old. Admittedly, most of the group is at least 5 to 10 years younger, but there are a couple of blokes my age holding all the way, whereas I'm nearly always dropped, often within the first 5K. As mentions that his FTP is about 260 via the ramp test, weight of 80 kilograms, and height of 176 centimeters. And he says he typically does the aforementioned ride plus at least one high-intensity workout. And he says a mix of sweet spot and some recent VO2 max work, plus some slow and recovery rides and some longer rides. So he basically does a bit of everything, right, when he fills in his week. Still gets into quite a lot. All right, and he also says that he eats well and goes to the gym, so all that information. He says he doesn't race and doesn't compete, hence his only goal for this point is just to get better for this group ride. Any tips to help me hang on for longer would be much appreciated, including best ways to structure my training program. So stepping back and looking at this one just as the group ride in itself, or actually stepping outside of that even, this is a good example of the fact that you don't have to have a race to train for something. If you just have a recurring group ride, then it's just fun to go through. And even with Plan Builder, you can say, I don't have an event. And it will basically say like, well, what type of cycling do you want to work on? And then you can just, say, I want to work on this, and it'll lay out plans for you. So it's kind of an easy thing to do there, which is pretty cool. But yeah, you don't have to be a racer to have events. In fact, it'd be kind of fun to be like, the group ride hero, so to speak.
Yeah.
Kind of a fun thing
There's
to do.
a lot of people
Totally.
who are like that.
Totally.
Even local.
Yes.
That's all they do. It's like that's their A-rate, or that's the race every week is the group ride.
It's fun because you can count on having that race every week. Unlike, you know what I mean? So it's kind of
All
cool.
the other races that aren't here anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of a fun thing to do. So group rides, like it always starts out hard like that. And it puts, there's two sides of it. If you're not fit, or if you're not riding as efficiently as you should be, it will put you on the back foot, right? Like that's like normal. I mean, all of our group rides kind of start out like that. So I guess what advice would you give him? We'll get into the training aspect a little bit later, but what advice would you give him in terms of what he should do in the group ride to hang in a little longer, Pete?
Yeah, I think, man, the back is such a hard place to be, right? Like, if you want to make the race or ride as hard as you can possibly make it, hang out in the back.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think with him, it's nice that he feels bad for everybody else he's riding with.
Sure. But he shouldn't.
He shouldn't. But the people who he's worried about dropping will just go around him. Happens to everybody all the time. And I bet he can hang, if he started in the front row and never took a pull and just filtered through the back, I bet he would last twice as long, maybe even the whole thing. It's just, he has to find himself not in the back.
Pete, why is the back hard?
You end up taking all the accelerations from every time the front goes faster, the back does twice as much or 3 times as much. Every time there's a turn, you end up braking more and reaccelerating more. It's so much harder, right? And you can't. Tailgunning is a little bit different, but you have to respond to what everybody else is doing rather than kind of making some moves on your own.
What about side climbing?
Side climbing is a great plan.
But can you do that from the rear?
You can't. You just drop yourself.
So what is
dropped?
Yeah.
What is side climbing, Pete?
So side climbing is when you start at the front of a pack and over the course of the hill, you drop through the whole field. If it's the 30 guys, like that's probably you get to ride a 30-second hill 5 seconds slower than everybody else.
Which is a big difference.
For me, that's like 100 watts different.
Yeah.
And doing that for 5 seconds is so much better. And if you're in the back, I get dropped if I side climb.
In our video, what to do when you bridge short breakaway, the very first scene of that is an example of sag climbing. And this is like a short climb. Everyone's gunning it.
Yes.
And people are going from the back to the front, which is like a very bad time to move up.
Yeah.
I feel like
Hardest time to move up.
Yeah. It's crazy. And the yo-yo part, what happens is if there is every gap that happens, every mistake someone happens that opens a wheel, those compound over the whole part. So at the end, the gap is like really big. Where at the beginning, maybe it's like half a wheel. It could be like 3 riders. Yeah. And then everyone sprints to accelerate. So it can be very hard.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so painful.
And one last thing is the front of the pack is pretty consistent speed-wise, right? But the back of the pack will fluctuate. Like I'm sure he goes 60K an hour to catch back into the back of the pack all the time. Yeah. And that's so hard.
Right.
So
Go ahead.
No, if you just push yourself into the back third, right, just off the back, and then you're missing a third of the people who are probably making the bad riding mistakes anyways. So just kind of remove them out of the things that you have to accommodate.
That's what I was going to say is there is a spot in the back where like the acceleration or the gaps happen, but then you don't fill them. Other people fill them for you.
Yes.
And you actually just like you float back and then you're at the very end. And
It's
then when
magical.
it slows down, this is like tailgating. Then you float back up and then it happens again and you float back. So you're not the one like really responding to it. But when you're the very last person, you can't float back.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
You're kind of like sag climbing the acceleration.
if you
The
watch
reverse sag.
yeah, exactly. If you watch a lot of our race analysis footage, like recently we put out a video that was all about a stage race that we did, you'll see Pete actually doing the sag climbing really well in the road race that we did, which was stage 2 of that Omnium. Yeah, well enough. But you'll see you employ that constantly. Like you find that sweet spot within the group where you can let yourself have some elasticity, for lack of a better term, to be able to move fore and aft in that pack.
Yeah, it's like getting to choose your own washing machine, right? If you move forward when it's easy and move back when it's hard, your whole race is easier. And the pack accommodates always.
Pete's a high FTP big rider guy, but this is for anytime you're riding with riders that have a higher watt per kg on a climb.
Yes.
Like you could be 130 pounds and you could still need to do this tactic. You don't have to be a big guy.
Absolutely.
Jonathan, where can we see these videos?
You can see them at youtube.com/trainerroad. There's a whole playlist that we actually have, and you can subscribe, and then you can check out that playlist and even favorite that playlist. So then once we post race analysis videos, you can get notified of it. And the whole playlist on race analysis stuff. And you'll get to see a ton of races where Nate has gone from basically Cat 5 to Cat 2. Like the majority of the races, you'll get to see him on there, which is pretty cool.
Every race.
So
There's 2 more, and we're gonna record them tomorrow.
Yeah.
pretty sweet.
Yeah, every race where I got points, I think we have a video.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
so,
it's really cool.
So basically, if
in
you
1
want
year
to,
too.
Yeah, flex. Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
Well, it's Trainer Road
for sure. Yeah,
yeah,
man. You trained well, and then on top of that too, you had like every week you were doing like a retrospective, basically like looking at what you did and how you could have done it better.
Totally,
that's a big thing.
It's Pete.
and tying this, yeah, exactly. Tying this back into the question that we have from Peter here, that's a good thing to do. like when you do these group rides, since this is like a recurring thing and this is your only goal, after the group ride, try to be analytical about when you dropped off and what happened. And also when you're in the group, look at what's going on.
Yeah.
A lot of the time it's really, especially when the first bit starts out so hard, it's easy just to stare at your stem and then suddenly you're off the back and you don't know what happened and you just say, I'm just not fit enough. But I know I've done this so many times myself when I kind of like cheat my fitness where I don't have enough fitness to really be where I'm at in a group, but it's because I'm riding more efficiently, I actually end up hanging in there.
Yeah.
So you can do it, you know?
I remember with our drop ride, the first time I like hung in for a lap, I was like, oh, I'm going to attack. And then boop, right off the back after
Yep.
that, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Try to like last the whole time before you do stupid things. And we're going to talk about this more. The other race videos besides ours that are really good are Jeff Linder, NorCal Cycling. He's
Fantastic
been on the podcast.
videos. Yep.
Watch those from Jeff Linder. I would say watch if you're any type of cyclist, watch all of his and all of ours.
Yep.
And you can do them while you're riding.
Yeah.
And then I also, this is pretty cool. We put our full races too on YouTube.
And there's a different playlist for that.
Yep. And as you're working out, I do this a lot when anything that's intensity, I have music going and then I watch the video and without any sound and I just look at the racing. And the beginning of the races, I'm like, from the early of the year, I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get better. But if you watch Jeff's, he's always smart. So
One of the rules of thumb that I have when I'm worried about a group ride being too hard for me is I just think like efficiency, focus on that until I start to see riders getting dropped. And then that's the point where I'm like, okay, now I can think about actually showing cards or trying to do something. But before then, I don't try to do it. Even if those riders, let's just say those riders were probably going to get dropped anyway, something like that, it still doesn't matter. If you go too early, even if everybody else is not as fit as you, you can still hurt yourself.
It's true.
he says this, but in our drop rides, he just attacks 1,000
all the
times,
time.
just over and over from the get-go.
He's not showing his cards then yet.
Flex. Yeah, that was good.
I will say if the efficiency thing sounds strange to you, you're like, what do you mean efficient? I'm pedaling my bicycle. Watch the videos exactly like Nate said. I watch a lot of our footage that we record the full race because it's like looking at a problem and then deciding would you go left, right, straight, and then you see what the person did, and it's just reinforcing all these decisions that you make on a bike all the time. And I think that what Nate does is super valuable. It just gets what that decision making should look like in your head.
And you need to look at the power too, because you're like, oh wow, I put out way too much power. Like closing gaps where you go 600 watts and then you coast for 0 right afterwards. You're like, I didn't need to do that amount, and everyone else like swarms you.
Yes.
You're like, why was I the one shutting this down?
Yeah.
That's an extra surge that I could be using in the last lap.
Yeah. Whenever that happens, you should like think about it critically and be like, I shouldn't have done that. When you close down a gap, then everybody just goes around you looking fresh.
That's the worst.
It's the worst.
You know that you were just a pawn for the whole field.
I know.
You know?
Or when
It's rough.
you try to bridge, but you actually just pull up the field.
Yeah.
And it's like,
If you had waited for one more second, I bet 7 other people would have ran out of patience and done it themselves, you know, because they were so ready to do it. So, and the last thing that I just want to hit home on, Peter, is do not feel bad about going even to the front.
Yeah.
The only thing that is bad about being at the front is if you're riding dangerously. It's not if you're not fit. If you're not fit, but you're at the front and you're riding safely and responsibly, it's totally fine.
everyone's happy.
Everyone's
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
Yep. And everyone will find their way around and it'll work through. It's just when riders are dangerous, it doesn't matter how fit they are. If they're dangerous at the front, that's when things get scary. And that's when a group will get irritated and everything else.
And that's where you learn things too,
Totally.
right? Like you don't learn things tailing off the back.
You learn how to get stuck at the back of the pack when you ride at the back of the pack.
Can we talk about a couple things what would be dangerous riding at the front?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So one would be hitting your brakes, especially for no reason.
Yep.
Like unless there's a turn coming up, would do that. Not calling out things on the road.
Yeah.
Taking your hands off the handlebar for no reason. Like one hand, you're pointing at things, you get a drink, that's fine. But sometimes people just like I'm going to take my hands off and like literally pull out my phone, take a group picture. It's not the time, right? Especially when people
and
are
it's
going
a
to be
hard
searching.
group ride, not the time.
Yeah, just go off by if you want to do it, go to the side, right?
Yeah.
Sudden changes in line. That's a really bad one. Like, so let's just say you're in the front of you're in a group ride and there's a pothole, but nobody's pointed it out, but you're in a tight group. honestly, it's better to hit that pothole unless it's like something that's really going to like, make you go over the bars or something. But it's better to hit that pothole than to swerve over and take a rider out.
Yeah.
That's a big thing that I see. And it's easy to forget because you're just riding and suddenly you see pothole. So you think I need to swerve around it. But if you're in a group, you hold your line, and unfortunately the person in front of you didn't point it out, and it is what it is, but don't swerve. I had that same thing actually at Cliff Camp this year, and it gave me a huge pinch flat with a tubeless tire, but I wasn't going to swerve because I didn't want to take somebody out because that would have been way worse than just getting a flat tire.
Exactly, and you can practice unweighting your bike. Like, you don't have to bunny hop, but hitting things with 75% of your weight on your bike is way better, and you're not likely to crash doing that. Where if you swerve, man, all the terrible crashes you ever see are from someone swerving into someone else into a pack, and then just 10 people go down.
Yeah.
Sudden changes in line. Also, if you're in and out of the saddle, for example, Chad's workout text, whenever you're doing Trainer Road workouts, they hit home on this all the time. Be smooth in and out of the saddle. There are plenty of riders that once they go out of the saddle, they really and they're going to attack, something like that. They really their momentum stops and they kind of throw their bike back almost when they get in and out of the saddle.
Hits a tire.
Hits a tire. That's dangerous.
That's another thing is if you're in these, you're not winning something, you can give yourself a little bit of breathing room. You can. You don't have to be millimeters away from the tire. I know when you're when it's really fast, you might fall off on a different, but when you're just going slower, the group's riding out, give a couple feet and don't be the guy saying, "Oh, you're leaving a little gap. You're behind. You're behind me. You're drafting me. Don't worry about it, buddy." But what that does is, if there is a pothole, you have a little more time to respond to it. And sometimes you can move an inch and not hit it. It's not a swerve. And then you can get a little bit of escape. And if everyone kind of does that when you're going 20, it's a much safer group ride. When you're pegging 30 and it's in a race, it's different. I've hit the biggest potholes when it's in a race. You're going fast and you can't go anywhere. And it's oh my God, what's going on here?
You just hit them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's a good point. So Peter, hopefully that helps him out. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, the one last thing is smooth pedaling. Right, you'll remember the people who pedal hard and then coast and pedal hard and coast and pedal hard and coast, and that it shuffles back through the group and it's awful. So
I usually go around those people.
Yeah, if you're near the front, if you're in the front quarter of the pack, stay consistently pedaling, and sometimes you're only doing 50 watts and sometimes you're doing 500 watts. That's okay, but stay pressure on the pedals. Keeps everybody happy.
I find that pressure on the pedals is always best.
more is better.
Yeah. It's actually what I usually tell myself. Just remember to put pressure on the pedals before the race, and things will work out. So
must be nice to be John.
Alan says, "Hey guys, thanks for a great podcast and for taking my question. My question is about integrating outside enduro type rides into base and build training plans. So we should clarify, this is also just mountain bike rides.
Generally
and
speaking,
it's also just road group rides when they aren't serious. This is how people casually ride bikes, usually. And what I mean by that is that you climb at whatever pace you want to climb at, and then you take some breaks, and you catch up with your friends and hey, we'll catch up at the top of the climb or whatever. And then you have fun down a descent or something else, and you just carry on. But there's no structure to the ride necessarily in terms of driven toward making you faster. It's only structure toward pleasure or something else, right? So that's how that works. So this is how it relates to everybody listening to this. So not just enduro riders and mountain bikers. For background, my race goals are cross-country marathon, and I also like to race my local short track XC series. I have a decent endurance background and snuck in just under 9 hours at Leadville last year. Nice work. That's impressive, Alan. Way to go. I'd love to do Leadville again and also have visions of stage racing in the future. However, I love riding laps on the local trails on my enduro bike. I can easily rack up 1,500 to 3,000 feet of climbing in a session, and the climbs are at least sweet spot or threshold efforts just based on the pitch and terrain. That's a super important thing to note. Most mountain bike climbs, you cannot ride them easy. They're just always hard because they're steep, right? The runs are about 1.5 to 3 minutes long. He's talking about the descent part, right? So pretty short descents. So that means they're short and steep, most likely. And he says there's no recovery unless I just stop and catch my breath. It's basically sweet spot or threshold intervals with anaerobic efforts in between on the runs. My question is this: how do I classify these workouts and factor them into my training week? And how does one balance one's cross-country nerd race goals with his wannabe enduro bro desires?
This is you two guys.
Yes.
Because you want to be great at both.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Well, one's really fun.
Exactly.
And the other is mountain biking.
The other makes your eyes bleed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Pete, you and I both did EWS North Star this year. Mm-hmm. So we can also certify the
Enduro
fact.
bro.
Yeah. So we are Enduro bros.
Did you get a tattoo or a stamp?
We got tattoos.
Yeah,
Both of
I
us.
got a brand.
Yeah. The only brand. Yeah. But we both can, I guess, vouch for the fact that enduro racing is so far from easy.
It's very, very, very hard.
It is extremely hard physically, and you can go on to, once again, our race analysis series, and we have a whole thing where you can see with Richie Rude, he actually critiqued my race runs, and you can hear me breathing, and
Going downhill.
and going downhill, and I sound like a Saint Bernard or something like that just fetched a Frisbee. It's bad. So it's extremely hard. Fitness-wise in terms of turning pedals, and then fitness-wise in terms of managing the violence. It's riding a bull for the whole entire ride down. It's just, it's extremely hard. So there's a difference between just going out and riding enduro and racing enduro, just like there's a difference between going out and riding your road bike and racing a road bike.
Yep.
But I find the difference is, once again, with mountain biking, there's no such thing to me as like a recovery mountain bike rider. There is, but it's really hard to do, and it's probably not on the terrain you want to ride on.
Yeah, it's not a ride you wanted. Any ride you want to do is not a recovery mountain bike ride.
Because you want to go up to then go down something really fun. That's what you want to do, but the ups are always hard. Like Nate, you'd kind of tackled this problem by going to a resort, right? Because then you can ride the lifts up.
But it's still very, very tiring. But it's I would do that and go down. It kind of muscular tiring, but I could still pedal the next day because I was doing basically no pedaling during it, and I could handle that on my easier Friday day last year.
I find that if I go out and if I not at a resort and if I could just go out and have fun on the mountain bike, I feel it the next day just like I did a workout, just like anything else.
Well, like if you did a weight training workout,
Yeah.
then a 2-hour sweet spot workout.
Yeah.
Sure.
And general fatigue too, right?
Yeah, it's high. And then the hard part is we think, well, that wasn't a workout. So we kind of preclude it or like exclude it from everything that we have. And then we wonder why our training is getting so hard.
My TSS said 0.
Yeah,
Therefore, I don't
exactly.
need to treat it like a workout.
Yep. So, and when you do a trainer road workout, an outside ride that's not structured or anything, and it basically, if you have a power meter, obviously trainer road will calculate the TSS for that, right? But if you don't have a power meter, which is common for a lot of people on like their enduro bikes, that sort of thing, it leaves it up to you to estimate it. And you really have to go off the feel. But I wouldn't really go off the feel of during the activity as much as compare that feel or the feel that you have the next day compared to the workouts that you do the next day. And that's how you kind of try to assimilate the TSS. So that's how you could kind of factor it into what you're doing. And kind of keep a lid on the training to make sure you're not doing too much of that stuff, you know?
Yeah, I would say I was very tired from the EWS training and I got slower.
Yeah.
Right? Like that in the 4 weeks that I put a lot of effort into getting ready for the EWS, I got less fit.
Yeah.
And I was tired all the time.
Less fit for road riding, crit racing.
Yeah,
that sort of
less
stuff.
fit. I mean, less pedaling fit, less physically fit.
Faster downhill fit.
But faster downhill fit. But that was like technique and more like grip strength, you know, little
removing
stuff.
fear.
Yeah, removing fear. But as far as actually pedaling, man, I definitely got slower.
Yeah. So you kind of have to balance it because there's like one side where it's kind of like if your descending is holding you back, then this is absolutely worthwhile. But if it's and it'll make you faster, right? Like Nate, we were talking about Leadville. Even though Leadville's not considered a technical race, if you had better bike skill at Leadville, you feel like you would have gone faster,
like
right?
20 minutes faster.
Right.
It's amazing how many people pass me on downhills.
Right. So so if you're looking at improving your overall speed or result on something, this could absolutely be something you want to do.
Yeah. Take a real look and assess what you're good at and what you need some work on.
Yep.
And then you'll be able to decide what training is actually worthwhile.
In the end, I think I'd kind of recommend incorporating these sort of just mountain bike rides like you would strength training sessions in one regard, in the sense that you have to consider the fact that it's going to take a toll, but it could be a necessary part of your training program that you need in order to get better. and not only just get better, but also just psychologically manage things. You know, I know that when I go and ride my mountain bike and do like great descents, everything else, especially on shuttle days when we can just repeat fun descents over and over. So instead of descending once, I can descend 6 times. I feel great.
Yeah, you're happy, right?
Like it's really fun, you know, and I feel like a psychological boost. I get excited about riding again. If I'm run down, I think it's a great thing to add.
So as far as Alan says, how should I factor them in and classify these workouts? Alan, what I would do depends on, did he say what plan he's on? Cross country marathon?
No.
Okay. Well,
that's his goal though. So probably training toward that.
If you have complete flexibility, here's either Thursday or Sunday with our classical plan stuff, because they are going to make you a little more tired because there's the added ability of like what we just talked about, whole body strength. And on Thursday or Sunday, Friday's either an easier day or a day off in our plans, and Monday is a day off on our plans. So having that at the very end would give you time to recover for the next workout, where if you did it on a Wednesday, Thursday's hard, or if you did it on a Tuesday, then you have Wednesday that's on some plans it's semi-hard, too hard, and then you have Thursday, and that can be kind of wear you down. But you're doing sweet spot or threshold. A lot of times, too, on Thursday, they are a sweet spot or threshold workout. So you might be not getting the amount of time at sweet spot or threshold. You could do reps so you get enough time, but like a steady 20 minutes at threshold is different than 5 minutes at threshold. Even though they would produce the same TSS, which is another discussion.
Sure.
But that's how I would structure it to try to not mess up your other training.
And I think that one thing that how close you are, if you're already struggling with your weekly workouts, adding the mountain bike ride isn't going to help.
No,
unfortunately.
No.
It's
gonna make it tougher.
Yeah, it's going to make it tougher. So if you're killing it and your regular sweet spot rides and your regular weekly workouts feel good, you can fine tune how much mountain biking you can add. But if you're already on the limit.
Can I add one caveat too to working it into your training? A lot of the time, thanks Nate, appreciate that. So let's say that his sweet spot to threshold climbs every time to go up to the top of these runs is 10 minutes. And he has 3 10-minute sweet spot intervals scheduled for that day. There's like a tendency to think, perfect, I can get my workout done, which you can. But think of it this way. If you're to do that workout inside and then in the rests, you were to basically be doing squats and you were to be jumping around and doing something extremely difficult, then get back on and do it again, that would probably make you really tired for the next day's workout. So even though the intervals, like the climbs, may work out to be the same, the descending is still really taxing. So you can't just say like, well, since the climb is 10 minutes long and I have 10-minute intervals to do, that's going to be perfect. I can just check off my workout. You could do that. You just have to make sure that you're not at your limit in terms of what you can sustain for stress, because that is going to the descending just adds more. So as much as we want to think that it's only hard when we're pedaling, it's not.
It's hard all the time.
That's why you should do it Thursday or Sunday.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Even like a cyclocross skills day, that's not going to be not strenuous. That's going to be difficult. Doing run-ups, getting off and on, all that stuff. So yeah, it's hard. John says, okay, this is a long one, which I'm sure Jonathan will like. I think that he was being sarcastic there. I hope. He says, but I also think it's an important question for those using Trainer Road as it relates to effort pacing during intervals. On Sunday, I completed Ainsley, which Nate, do you want to, we should probably explain what Ainsley is, which it's one of our workouts. And I think it's at 105%, right?
Yep, it is 4 times 4-minute intervals at 105% FTP with 4-minute recoveries at 50% FTP.
Cool. So hard workout. 4 minutes at 105%. And it's not.
It's a 0.8 IF for an hour.
Sure.
So it's a solid workout.
Those 4 minutes, at the end of the 4 minutes, you'll be glad it's over.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. It's a solid workout, but
Yes.
it's not like a Mary Austin
Broken
Carpathian.
finger.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. Yeah, exactly. Cool. So that gives you some context. He says, on Sunday, I completed Ainsley, and based on a 260 FTP and an erg mode, I completed the first intervals hitting the target powers with a cadence of 91 to 85. I presume it means 85 to 91 average. And he says in a heart rate of around 145 to 150. These efforts were difficult but comfortable and steady both in terms of cadence and power output. With these efforts, I focused on increasing my cadence and effort throughout the interval, so starting easier and getting harder. This is reflected in my heart rate going up to a peak of 166. For the last 2 intervals, however, I realized that because I was in erg mode, I might as well try and push my cadence as high as possible. And the benefit of that with erg mode when you're using Trainer Road is you can ride at whatever cadence you want within reason. Usually once you get down toward like 50 RPM, trainers start to have, it makes it a little bit harder to hold it. But it'll still hold the power target because it's constantly adjusting resistance. And he says he did this from 100 to 110 from the start and then tried to hold that for as long as possible throughout the interval. For threshold 4 and 5, for those intervals that he did, the last ones, I hit 102 average cadence and around 158 to 162 average heart rate. And he says 273 power, nailed that. So that was the goal. These efforts, though, felt much harder, like I was hanging on and really having to push. By the end of the last effort, my cadence was down to 63, and he says my heart rate was at 175. So even though he started high, he really dropped down, right? And he says
That's really low.
that's a big drop.
63.
Yeah, you're dragging at
That's
that
a
point.
grind.
Yeah,
Yes.
struggling a little
That's
bit.
why did I bring this gearing to this climb?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he says that his heart rate was almost maxed out at 175, but with good power. So my question is, which is the right way to approach an interval? Start hard and hold on to get max benefit, or start easier and get harder throughout the effort? I felt that the first approach is better as it increases overall effort and thus adaptation. However, my TS, and that's an assumption on his end, right? He says, however, my TSS data says 7 for 7 on all intervals, that they were all the same, basically. But for the last 2, they certainly felt harder than the previous ones. And he says, and he mentions not just because they were at the end of the session, but because of the approach that he took. Thanks, 5 out of 5 on the podcast.
I want to say a few things before we go through our notes.
Cool.
First, as you go through intervals at threshold, even high sweet spot or above, it is very, 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 very common for your heart rate to go up for each and every interval.
Totally. Happens to everybody.
Yes.
Every time.
Like we are fatiguing you, and your body's getting more fatigued through the whole workout. So
Yes.
that's to be expected. So
Yes.
some of the cadence stuff might not even be related to that. You just be getting tired.
That's another tricky thing of heart rate.
Exactly.
Yep.
The second one, if your effort level goes up, let's say we could take that out, right? What maybe you're finding is, hey, I'm not very good at riding that 100 and 110 cadence. Then you need to make the decision is this needed in my racing? If yes, where I think 100 probably. I mean,
Sure.
But if you're a gravel racer, maybe you never do 110. You ride at 80 and that's your thing. You don't need it. But if you're a mountain biker, oh yes. Crit, yes. Cyclocross, yes. You're going to need to be able to do with those. And then I would add some of those cadence drills, but into easier workouts.
Yes, exactly.
So there's one called Baxter.
Yeah,
So that is a whole cadence drill.
Nate's heard of that one before.
I don't always do the cadence. I never do the cadence drills on that anymore, but I'm pretty good at riding at lots of cadences, and it doesn't impact my RPE.
Yeah.
But try it on the lower wattages and being able to ride at those, and not on the harder ones.
Yes.
And 2, just because something feels harder, which I think we're going to get into more, does not necessarily mean you are getting more training benefit.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, this is something that the guys from the Strong Runner by Science podcast talked about. And we actually talked about this one before. There's some bro science that makes so much sense in our minds, but data hasn't backed it up yet, that it's kind of like you really don't get benefit until the last 2 intervals, because that's in your stretching capacity, right?
They say reps, but
Yeah, reps for them. But for us, in the mindset, it would be intervals, right? And they actually found that that's not the case, that it's not the case that when you do those extra reps right at the end, that's where you get hypertrophy or whatever else they were going for.
Arnold said it, you get all the benefit in the last 2 reps.
Yeah.
Apparently not.
But apparently not. Science doesn't necessarily back that up. Makes so much sense in our minds, right? But, that's just how that goes. So, it's important to make sure that you understand that, TSS is not equal to effort.
Yes,
Right?
That's the one that decoupling that really needs to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's hard because we feel man, I feel that was harder than the other one, but you still did the same amount of work, and TSS is based off the work done.
This is why when I can, I take in caffeine.
Yes.
As far as we know, caffeine doesn't blunt aerobic adaptions, but it lowers the RPE. So during a workout, I have 2 choices. I can either actually increase the wattage, which will make me faster, or I do the same workout and it's not as hard.
Yep.
Which is, to me, I love that, because
Yes.
that I think that's less burnout, more likely to be consistent, can do things, or eating, sleeping.
Sure.
Yeah. Better long-term solution.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
You do a whole year where everything instead of an 8 is a 7.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier.
This is something that you'll see in common with all good endurance athletes and coaches, is that every workout should not feel like it absolutely drained you. You don't want that.
Oh, you want easy days.
You want days. You
Extremely
want days
easy
where you
days.
feel like you are on top of it, and you are on top of the ball, and you just knocked that workout out.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. In 1 week, it might change and it might be hard, right? If you're consistent, and the cool part is, if it's a little bit easier, it's going to make it easier to be more consistent. And if you can do more work, that's the one thing that we've found in terms of a consistent thing where fast people, or like people that are doing a good job, like plus 4.5 watts per kilogram, that sort of stuff. One of the most common factors between all of them is consistency in training. We can say that if you're more consistent, it's better. Yeah. Sorry.
Off the couch.
Off the couch, 4 watts. So annoying. It is so annoying.
Nate's triggered right now. But
Just jealous.
But the thing is, I think that John is kind of, and this is a tendency, I see this a lot. He's kind of trying to get the most out of every interval and make it hard. Yeah. Squeeze the juice.
Squeeze the juice out.
Right? Like make every interval even harder. Find ways to get more out of every interval.
You'll get faster by being 1, consistent, and 2, adding volume. So you can either go up in volume in the plan level.
Yep.
An easy way too is you just add an extra 10, 20 minutes at the end with our extend cooldown feature. Make that aerobic. Kind of what you would do a Baxter or Pettit at. That is a great way to add volume. I've had great success with that. I think a lot of riders here have.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I can't sing the praises of that enough. It's easy. It feels nice to do. It recovers you a little more for your next workout. And
It doesn't. I don't think it recovers you more for your next workout.
Yeah, you spin out your legs a little bit.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Whatever that actually does. And it's like 20, 30, 40 more TSS a week over a long period of time.
Yes.
The cool part about it is that it doesn't take that much more time. Where if you did another session, it takes a lot more time.
Totally.
You just add an extra 15 minutes, and it's just there, right?
Yeah.
And then you're right, Pete. You do that every day, and I guess it could be an extra 10. So you could add 60 TSS to the week.
That's a
which
lot.
is like a
That's a lot.
Makes
solid
a big
workout.
difference. So let's just say you are in the situation of John where you feel like the workouts are too easy, and that's why you're trying to get more out of them. In that case, I just recommend you reassess.
Well, they're not based on his heart rate going up. They're not too easy, right?
But let's just say you are, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you're in that situation. You feel like you're trying to get more out of the intervals because it feels easier than it should feel.
Yeah.
Reassess.
Recess. And just also know that aerobic should feel easy, and sweet spot should be challenging, but not I'm throwing up.
Yeah, soul crushing.
Soul crushing, yeah. And that, I mean, if you don't fuel, we've talked about this before with Amber.
Sweet spot can feel really bad.
Yeah, it can feel
If you
really,
don't
really
fuel.
bad. But
Yeah.
if it's, you don't have to make those hard. But in this workout, though, 0.8 IF, solid.
Yeah.
But, I don't even know which plan this is not even in a plan, so he's just cherry picking.
Yeah.
You could go for the +1, or it goes up to, oh my goodness, +8. It goes up to +8. So if you want more, choose another plus, and you can do a whole bunch more intervals. So
Sure.
it goes up to 1 hour and 45 minutes at 0.82, which
Yep.
is still, that's hard, but it's still doable. It's 8 of these instead of 4.
Yep. Some other things, if you feel like you need more, right, in one regard or another, strength training. Maybe you aren't strength training, you can add that in.
Yep.
Focus on and then when we talk about the cadence side of things, focus on a cadence range that's outside of your familiarity, but you don't need to go crazy. You don't need to go down to 50 and do 130, something like that, unless you plan on, for some reason, using those in your race.
If you're a track guy, track rider, you'd definitely want to be able to really high cadence.
Sure.
But really, I'm never going above 110, 120
hardly
in a
ever.
race. And I don't need to practice that. I don't need to do 150 spin ups.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. So it's really prepping in terms of cadence, just prep for what you plan on racing for. And it is really good, like Nate said, to be familiar with a wide range, but doesn't have to go crazy. And then I guess the last thing, but there's a lot of asterisks with this one. If it does feel like you just need to add more and you have the need for heat adaptation coming up for some sort of hot event that you're going to do, then you can start to incorporate, dropping your cooling down or something like that when you're training. But if you drop that down on workouts like Ainsley, where it's 105% FTP, that's probably going to be really limiting in terms of your ability to complete the intervals. Where you want to start to add that in is on lower intensity stuff. We're talking really low intensity.
Or after the workout.
Or after. The best case scenario is to separate it entirely from your training, right? To just do the sauna time or sit in the hot bathtub with your hands and feet submerged, and to do that
Directly after the workout.
Directly after,
rather than doing it in the work, because then you can just make both optimized.
And no, it's going to take like 7, 10, 2 weeks to like get the adaptions. And then I forget exactly how fast they go away, but it's fast. It's like a week.
It's fast.
So if you start doing it now and you're not consistent because you have a hot race, you have Kona coming up next October.
Yeah.
Might not benefit you. What I want to see, and everyone has any research on this, please put it in the forum post on this, is if you take 2 groups and you have one be heat adapted, can they then go deeper on these workouts? Or does it then lower the RPE? Because it's just like the caffeine thing, right?
Totally.
Do I have a choice to do that? And then over time, over 6 months, if I continue this, is my performance going to be better?
Right.
I don't know.
Exactly.
I would think that maybe.
Possibly. Once again, it makes sense in the mind.
I know, but that's what I want to see the results.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's how it goes, right? John's question says, "Hey guys, love the podcast. 5+ stars." There's a couple Johns this week. He says, "I have a question that relates to the advantages of being a larger rider, if any. It seems there are a few." He says, "I'm a bigger rider, about 6 foot 4 inches and 195 pounds, about 190 on race days. That's big. So that's just a little bit shorter than you, Nate, and then but around the same weight, right?"
I was 194.5 this morning.
Okay.
And thanks for the person in the forum who asked me if I ate a donut. I guess I'm gaining weight on the camera, so now I will continue to lose weight today.
People are rough, man. People are brutal.
Yes.
So he says, "I'd love to get to about 180 pounds, so dropping about 10 pounds. That's a good amount to drop there." But he says, "But I love cookies." I feel him on that.
Yeah, I do too.
He says, "I ride mostly road races and Grand Fondos in the 100 to 125 kilometer range. So somewhere around, 70, 80 mile races, somewhere around there." And he says, "They're flat and rolling with a few longish climbs. And I've noticed something fairly consistent when I'm riding in a group. On the flats, it seems that I'm working less hard than the smaller riders. And when we hit a slight downhill, I often can stop pedaling altogether while most of the pack is still cranking away. This seems fairly consistent from group to group. Is it simply a matter that my mass to wind resistance ratio is more favorable than for the smaller riders? I'm somewhat familiar with Newton's law of motion, bodies in motion wish to stay in motion, etc., and Galileo's experiments with dropping feathers and bowling balls." And he says, okay, he probably didn't use bowling balls. Says, "off of towers. And it seems that my larger size may make it easier to keep moving, even if the hole I'm punching through the wind is slightly larger." He says, "but not larger enough to make up for the increased inertia." So he says, "Am I making this up? If not, I think I could use this to my advantage. For example, breaking away from smaller riders of equal power who will have a harder time maintaining the same speed on the flats, assuming I can get a gap. Love to get your thoughts on this and any other advantage that may come of being a larger rider. Thanks in advance. Keep up the great work."
Yeah, you're basically right.
So he is right. Next question. Just joking.
Done.
So the interesting thing with this one, like I've thought of this before, like when I go on descents, like I wish I had like, what do they call it? They call like ballasts in a boat, basically.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, I need more weight right now, and I want to get rid of it soon, but just right now, I want more weight, right?
Pick it up at the top of the climb and then drop it at the bottom.
Hey, why don't they do that, right?
It's like a feed,
Like-
a ballast feed.
Yeah, exactly. A ballast feed, like just load the cyclist up. Might make them more stable too, as long as it sticks to them. They're going to see that at the tour. They're just going to be like loading their guys up with like CrossFit weight vests going down. That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, like a 50-pound bike, so that the center of gravity is super low. They just jump on and
Just
then
a kid's bicycle at that point,
with
right?
like 32s on it.
Yeah, they
And
weigh 50 pounds and they're low center of gravity. It's perfect. There are absolute benefits in this case because whenever I ride with you, Pete, and also with you, Nate, too, I find that like there are times when I wish like you guys are doing all the right things to take advantage of your big weight. Like one of those examples is if we're coming into like a descent, I noticed that Pete, you sneakily always kind of build up your momentum coming into that descent so you can get a tiny gap. And then once that gap is established, it is curtains for all of us because you're sitting on your top tube and then all of us are trying to work so hard to close you down, but you have that weight working for you.
And at a high speed.
And at the high speed.
I know what you're talking about. You're going 40 there. So air resistance is a square when it, not a square, exponential when it increases.
Yes.
So the faster you go, the harder it is to close the gap.
Yes.
So if you can be a big rider, as John said, if you can get separation, we'll talk about some other ones, but separation.
Yes.
Then it's not it's not a fair playing field because it's like if based on your power and what did we say in the meeting? Oh, if at Pete's VO2 max, it is 120%, he can go 30, and John can go 28,
Yeah.
well, he's just going to be gaining time.
Yes.
Where if they're together, they're the same. And a smaller rider sometimes can't go as fast. They have to be really pretty aero.
Yeah.
Where if you're a big guy, this is why I buy all this aero stuff, because this is where my time to shine is. I want to make my strengths better.
Yep.
So if I do get separation, I want to be as aero as possible and put out as much power as possible so that I can get that little 1 or 2 miles per hour differential.
And I think what Nate said is exactly right. It's all about separation. As soon as a big rider has separation, it's a whole new playing field for us, and that's when the advantages really start to shine. So you can't waste your time doing things without a gap or without separation.
Yeah, like pulling, like if not, it's the opposite, because like when you sit behind me, you're probably doing, I don't know, 100 less watts than behind like Jose, a smaller rider.
For sure. Yeah, it's like if so as a smaller rider, whenever I see a gap opening up to a bigger rider, I really have to act very quickly at shutting that down, because once it gets established, it's just too hard to be able to make that up. Like another situation too is, and this is kind of for the same principle in many regards, but crosswinds and tailwinds. Like let's say we have a crosswind, and that crosswind is taking 50 watts out of us. 50 watts for me is a larger percentage of my threshold than it is for Pete.
Yep.
And if I'm not getting drafting benefit from Pete, then man, it's really tough for me to ride at the same speed that Pete's riding at. So that's another time. That's where like big riders do so well.
Yeah. So if you don't have separation in your big rider and there's a big crosswind, that's when you can attack. We see this all the time in the tour, and they all echelon out, and we have videos too. You get to the curb or something,
Sure.
be safe, but that's when you can put out a lot of power, and then you get the separation.
Yep. Yep. And tailwinds too, because tailwinds in one respect, they nullify or they decrease the effect of the draft, right?
Yep.
So at that point, if I'm drafting behind you, but you're still getting a push from the tailwind, I'm just having to work really hard to hold that speed that you have.
Yeah. And I think high speed in general, right? Like if you're above 35 miles an hour, it's going to be easier on us. Just like Nate was saying, just our VO2 max and speed is, the relationship is easier for us.
If there's separation.
Oh yeah.
If there's no separation, it's easier on the person drafting.
Well,
Sure, but separation
if
happens.
we're both drafting, if John and you are both drafting, you're having an easier ride in that high speed.
Sometimes, because when I get behind John and we're going that fast and he tucks in, I am.
Your knees are great. That's not it.
Yeah, but I'm putting out. I don't get as much of a rest.
Yep.
Let's say you're both on me. There's one of me in front of John, and there's one of me in front of you.
Yeah.
You're gonna have an easier ride if we're going 36 miles an hour.
Sure. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. If we're both the draft is
Yeah.
the
If
same.
the draft is the same.
Yep, exactly. The other thing too to think of is the fact that in a race it's never as dynamic, or it's never as set as like the wind's always going to be in this direction, and everyone's just going to follow a perfect ideal format and formation. Forgive me. Instead, it's always changing, right? And gaps always do open up, and things change constantly. So if you can be a bigger rider that's just trying to take advantage of it at the right point, a lot of kind of what we talked about in our recent race analysis video and that criterium that we did, that you can see in there. If you're a big rider and you're looking to take advantage of that, then you're going to be in a great spot. Just like if you're a small rider and whenever you get to climbs or that sort of stuff, you try to take advantage of that, right? Or accelerations.
I want to talk about Brendan Hausler. I think that's how you say his name.
I think that's right.
I've talked about him before. He's like 180 pounds, but he's got like a 400 to 420 watt FTP. Big guy. I think he's like 6'4", 6'5".
Got to
maybe
eat
6'6".
a lot to fuel that work.
Yeah. But also his body comp is on point. 2-time national champion, Masters. I believe it's road and TT. I know it's road for sure. I know it's one time for sure. But anyways, that's an example of a big guy winning, like even at road. And I think he did it through a breakaway because he got separation, and then you have that 400 watt FTP. Can you imagine just holding 400 watts for like 40 minutes?
It'd be amazing. Yeah.
And the other thing to
You'd
say,
eat a whole pizza.
Yes.
but even for that's not a huge like high watt per kg.
Right.
Right.
It's not, no.
But the tactics you use in the race makes it so that you take that size to your benefit by having only you doing it when you have separation.
Yeah, I think one thing that this underlines is that really big riders do one all-in attack, or it's a focused attack that matters a lot, where smaller riders can do like death by 1,000 paper cuts and just attack the field over and over. Big riders cannot do that, right?
Yep.
Don't waste your time trying things out. it's like when
Put
the
your eggs
iron's
in one
hot,
basket.
you just got to strike and go for it.
Especially if you get in a breakaway with another big rider, you guys go all in, especially for like the first like 4 or 5 minutes.
It's going to make it so hard on all of us.
I know, because you're going to. So if 2 people or 3 big riders are going all in, the field, I feel like, has to have 5 smaller riders that have to go all in. And the likelihood of them to like rotate correctly is not.
Yeah.
But if as a big rider, you get some separation, then for the first 3 or 4 minutes, you start riding at what you think your 30-minute rest of the race pace is, they're going to bring you back.
Sure.
You gotta get, like, commit to a serious effort.
Yeah,
And
you
then
really
you can
do.
stay away.
Yeah.
I think I want to talk about as a bigger rider, group rides versus races. As a bigger rider and lower watt kg, I feel like when you go on a group ride, especially if it's not like a drop ride kind of thing, there's at least here big climbs, and you're just gonna get destroyed all the time.
Yeah, it's not fun.
I'm a terrible group rider, right? I get dropped at group rides all the time. I've never won
Because the pace isn't crazy, but then everyone goes up. Like if the group ride goes on big long climbs, that sort of stuff, you guys just get detached.
Yeah. It's just a watt kg game.
Yep. That's it.
But on races, it's short power, tactics, separation, all this sort of stuff, which in a group ride, you do that and you're a jerk.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, drop ride's different, but
Totally.
in a group ride, you can't do that. So you can, group rides, I'm just like you. I'll get dropped all the time by all these people. But then you go to a race, totally different situation, and you can now do it. So just because you get dropped in a group ride all the time, you're a bigger rider, doesn't mean you can't be a great racer.
Totally.
Use your brain.
Exactly right. Yep. Let's go into Dale's question. He says, just finishing up Sweet Swap Base Mid Volume 2. I made it through successfully through Sweet Swap Base Mid Volume 1 and 2 without any major hangups. Congratulations. Hitting that sort of consistency is awesome. That's what makes you fast. He says, I'm now into the last week, which is recovery rides, which is a recovery week. Recovery ride week, I should say. So he's still on the bike. He says, every workout is easy to complete, but my leg muscles feel thrashed in between workouts. I've been cycling hard for 3 years and have always been about 180 centimeters, and he says 67 kilograms. And I'm always gaining FTP. He says it was 215 6 weeks ago. He says, but this being my first round of trainer road workouts ever, it's new to me to what my body is going through, not having the consistency until now. Is this the muscle recovery, he says in quotes, or healing from all the work I've done? And I assume he's talking about like the pain that he's feeling or like the discomfort, right? The soreness. If my legs are feeling this way, would it be a good idea to take a week to rest between the recovery week and starting a build phase? You fellas are accurate, inspiring, encouraging, and entertaining, and I promote you in any way I can. Thank you, Dale.
Thanks, Dale.
Appreciate that. That's a much more friendly way to interact than Nate having a donut or whatever anybody else said.
So I am gaining weight, but it's by choice. I'm lifting
You've been in the
weights.
gym a lot.
Yes. Trying to get that muscle on.
That's right.
Gains.
Yeah, must. So this is a good example of like structure hurts.
It's hard.
It is. And consistency, it adds up. Like you don't need every workout to feel like it kills you.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you do that, you're just not going to be consistent. But once you do, in this case, 12 weeks of training, then at that point you're like, wow, okay, this starts to add up, right? And with recovery weeks, we've mentioned this plenty of times before, but sometimes during a recovery week, I do feel like, oh yeah, I feel fine. Other times, I really don't feel okay. But then I usually find that it prepares me for the work to come. A recovery week is not necessarily there to make you feel great as much as to allow your body to take on more stress. And that's kind of like a good thing to keep in mind. Many times that side effect is you feel better, but not necessarily.
Well, and it's not a light switch, right? Like it's not recovery week. Oh, I feel great.
Yeah, like that
kaboom.
one day off, and then Tuesday you're ready to go.
Yeah,
right.
No, it's the whole week. It takes the whole week to recover from the whole block of training. So think of it as by the next week, in a week and a half from your last workout to the following Tuesday, you'll feel a little better.
And Dale, so on this, if you're in the middle of the recovery week or just beginning, like don't worry about it. You go through Sunday and you're still totally thrashed. Maybe do another recovery week just to see how that feels. But if you just have a little bit of like tired, tender legs, I'm like, welcome to the new norm. I mean,
for real.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, that feeling might only go away at the end of the year when you take more time off. I don't think I'm never like just perfectly fresh.
Do you guys, this is a strange question, but do you guys like that feeling?
Yeah.
I like it.
Jazz,
It doesn't it's not that I feel great, but I kind of like it.
one of my teammates just messaged me the other day and he said, that the feeling deep in your legs, it's here and I love it, or something like that.
Because he hasn't been training
Because
for
he
the
hasn't
past
been
couple
training,
years.
yeah, and he's back on the train, and he's been pretty consistent for the last few months, and he's like, yeah, that's just the thing you miss that feels good, like you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're consistent, your legs hurt a little bit, and you're going through everything.
I kind of like it. I don't know. It just feels like it focuses me a bit because it's always there, and I'm just like, yep, I'm in the middle of it, and I'm working hard, and I'm doing something worthwhile. I don't know. I kind of like it, but not to say that it feels comfortable. It still is uncomfortable.
I like it for weight training, but for cycling, I don't like it because it just means my workout's going to be a little harder.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I guess I like what it means, maybe, more than anything else.
The underlying reason.
Yeah, exactly, behind it, right?
The other thing, in my personal experience, because I've had just the worst thrash legs, but for me, extra carbs over time has made it so I have less hard thrash legs. I used to think it was protein, and I'd be like, oh, I have muscle damage, or I need extra protein, so that recover it. But I really think
it's the bro science, right? Like it makes sense in our mind.
That's not even bro science. That's real science. But
sure, yeah.
I've found a correlation of if I do eat a higher carb load, my legs aren't as damaged, and I don't know if it's because they don't get as damaged because of it, or it's a lack of glycogen that I'm feeling. But if you do carb up too, your legs feel bigger. And then when they feel bigger, that's actually, I do like that feeling. When you squeeze your legs and they're like, ooh.
I have muscles.
Yeah, exactly. You can literally feel like your leg muscles got bigger. You're like, this is working.
Yeah.
So you might want to try that. Also, during that recovery week, we mentioned a lot of times, but don't think this is the time to lose weight. Just fuel to hunger.
Yep.
Don't try to lose weight during that because your body is recovering, unless people are talking about how many donuts you're eating. On a live podcast.
In that case, just don't eat.
Yeah.
Fast for 7 days.
Oh, man. Let's go into Bogdan's question. He says, hey, guys, November 2019 marks 1 year for me being with Trainer Road and listening to the podcast. They both have kept me motivated and helped me to achieve my goals. 5 stars for reasons I will point out in my question. Awesome. Good to hear. And thanks, Bogdan. He says, thanks for Trainer Road and some hard work. At the end of the racing season this year, I upgraded to Cat 2 on the road, along with Trainer Road's very own Nate Pearson. Congrats, Nate. Yeah. He says, it got me thinking about the massive leap in almost all aspects of racing between Cat 3 and Cat 2, which is arguably the biggest of all category upgrades in the U.S. That's my question. Yep.
I would say, yeah.
And that's often because 2s right now race with 1s in many cases and race with pros.
P1, 2.
P1, 2, right?
There needs to be like 8 more categories to divide these guys up.
Yeah, it's tricky, right? So he says, thus my question, what advice would you give to a new Cat 2 with regards to 1, training? Would you say more aerobic base, more sustained power, and fatigue resistance? Number 2, race tactics. Now you're with the big guns, he says. Number 3, the path to Cat 1, and he mentions balance between gaining experience by getting your teeth kicked in and gaining experience by winning. And then the final one, number 3, when should one race the Cat 2 3 versus Cat 1 2, if there is such a choice? Because many times they combine the categories like that. Thanks for reading. Hopefully, I will get to see and race with you guys if you come out to Intelligentsia or Gateway Cup in 2020.
Thank you so much for asking this question, because I wanted to ask this question on this episode on the podcast, and then I read through the notes and I'm like, whoa,
it's amazing.
Yeah, and you've laid it out better than I would.
Yeah. So, and first of all, I don't know if we'll see him out at those races, but we have talked about going to those races. I don't know if it'll work out this year. So.
I'm trying to sweet talk Nate into going to some crit stage races.
Oh, I really want to go to, was it Gastown in Vancouver?
Yeah. That one's a good one. It's very hard.
Would that be good for a punchy rider?
It's BC Super Week. Then you could pick and choose and get it would tune you up. Let's just say.
I would get teed up, or would I? Okay, got it. Is it rolly and punchy stuff?
They're almost all crits. I haven't actually done BC. I've only done Gastown. I haven't done BC Super Week, but I think it's 5 days of crits during the week.
Vancouver's a pretty hilly city, so
Gastown has a hill in it, a cobbled hill, as a matter of fact.
Okay, Pete.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
as a Cat 1 racer, race at an elite national level, why is the P12 so much harder than the Cat 3s?
It kind of takes all the racing you're used to and flips it on its head, right?
Racing's different.
Racing's different, like 100%. All the things that worked in Cat 3 racing doesn't necessarily work in Cat 2, so all the things you've learned and fine-tuned over the course of your last season, if you're Nate, or many years,
Doesn't matter.
it's not as applicable, right?
Is that because of teams now?
Well, it's a bunch of different things, right? I think teams is a huge portion of it. All of a sudden, you're racing against drilled teams that have all the same goal as everybody on the team is working towards one goal, and racing a team it's so much harder than racing a single person or just racing a field, right? And then having multiple teams in it, now you're balancing racing against 2 or 3 or 4 strong teams and the way they want the race to unfold and versus how you want the race to unfold. I think as a Cat 3, pretty much you're along for the ride, or in 4s and 5s, you're along for the ride and then you try to win. Right?
Yeah.
Like, in the most basic sense. And in Pro 1-2, there's a certain way you can win the race. You don't have many options. You have a specific way that you win the race, or the type of rider you are that wins the race, and you kind of cultivate the race to turn into that scenario.
You try to drive it in that direction.
Yeah, and hope, right?
But there's everybody else is
doing the
same.
Exactly.
So in like 3, 4, or even the 1, 2, 3, I could win a breakaway, I could wait for the sprint and get points, or I could do a last lap flyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had options, right?
I had options, right? And then based on, I could look at whatever the option is best for that. That doesn't happen, right? Because in P1-2, sprinting, like I will never win another sprint or place in another sprint again from the field.
Because you're competing against not only really good sprinters that have honed their craft for years, but also their teams that are dedicated to that.
So it's the real deal, and then lead out train. So how does that work in the last? How does that work in P1-2?
Yeah, lead out trains are good. The whole finish of a P1-2 race is different, and depending on what caliber of P1-2 racing, it's more and more scary kind of as you go up. Like Nate, I used to be able to win bunch sprints, even Cat 2 bunch sprints I could win. And as a P1-2 sprinter, I am terrible, right? Like
relatively speaking.
And you peak at 1,800 watts.
Yeah, I'm a fast sprinter.
And he's terrible.
That's a lot of watts.
But you're terrible.
Yeah, I've never won a P1-2 bunch kick, for sure. It's so much more about positioning and kind of that last high. Let's say in a normal regional California NorCal race, the last few laps are pretty hard. Let's say 3-4 laps are going to be fast. So all of a sudden you're not sprinting from cruising around at 25 miles an hour.
Right.
And then you just uncork and kaboom, right? There was a sprint. You're going probably at threshold or, 100% for the last 3, 4, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But you're also, not only are you working at that pretty high percentage of your fitness, you are kind of battling 20 other guys also doing that same thing, and you're fighting for positions into each corner, kind of who you want to be sprinting off of, who you want to be around. People are still attacking, so there's still accelerations. You're in a whole, like the race transforms in the lead out. Yeah. And in the big races, we would always say you had to be in the position you want to be sprinting from when the lead outs start. Yeah. So for some races, that's like 10 laps to go or 15 laps to go. You need to be 10 or 15th wheel.
Which is hard to maintain.
And then you fight for 20 minutes. And if you turn off, you lose 5 or 10 wheels. If you make a mistake, you lose 5 or 10 wheels. So you have to make a bunch of decisions correctly in a row to just be able to play.
Yeah.
And that all still counts for regular P1-2 races. It's making a bunch of correct decisions at the end of the race because mistakes are much more costly. Yeah. Like Nate, I remember you had a couple races where you could move to the back to the front on the second 2 laps to go. You're like, I'm going to move to the front. And then
I just move to the front.
And then move to the front and then attack and kaboom. Like, that's the race.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore, unfortunately.
If there's one rider when all the teams are up there with and whether it's a full sprint lead out or not, but all the teams are present at the front and they're trying to maintain their position. Mm-hmm. First of all, it's so fast you can hardly even try to escape. But if one rider tries to go, you're not going to be able to do it with all those teams going up there. You can't sneak away.
Yeah, there's no sneaking away. And most of those lead-outs ride pretty defensively. Like, they'll close corners. If they see you coming, they're not going to let you attack the field, right?
They're going to move over.
They'll move over and stop you.
Plus, the videos I've seen, they're going 30, 35.
Yeah.
So you can't, how do you attack over that?
Yeah, exactly.
You're going 2 miles per hour more, than they get in your draft and then swarm you up. So there's also, we talked about, there's a different kind of swarming. So in the 3-4s, 3s, even a 2-3 race, I've had it where it slows down. You get swarm meeting the back of the field and it envelops you. But there's a different kind of swarming in P12s. What's that, Pete?
Yeah, so since the speed is already high and everybody wants to be near the front, right, obviously you're not going to win from the back. And we have multiple teams doing leadouts or even just duos where there's a leadout guy and a sprinter or a friend, someone you meet during the race. He's like, I'll lead you out.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, sweet, here we go.
Yeah.
So you have multiple groups all fighting for that front position. So not only is there more people pushing the pace, so the race is even faster because you're having to win to each corner. There's a mini drag race from corner to corner every time because the person who gets there first gets to take the line and everybody else slows down. But the whole front of the pack, if there's multiple leadout trains, is like 4 or 5 wide, and they're going that fast. So you
with a long tail
with a
behind
long
them.
tail, so you're not going to be able to kind of elbow your way into that group of people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's more
It sounds
difficult.
so fun. I can't wait to move
So
up
you
and-
see this in the Tour de France with the overall shots, but in the lower categories, there's like one train usually. So I've had one race where there was 2 trains, but that's it.
Yeah.
But this one, if there's multiple trains and you're sitting 7th wheel, and then suddenly 2 other groups of 35-mile-per-hour people come to you and you get boxed in, you're kind of swarmed, and now you're like 20th wheel all of a sudden.
And it takes no time at all. And what a lot of teams try to do is they time their hit so that when they have the right amount of people, if they have 3 or 4 people, that's probably 2 laps to go. So they're kind of sitting in the wings, and then with 2 laps to go, they're going to put it all in and try to do 2 laps as hard as they can and beat the other lead-out team to each corner. And I mean, all of a sudden, like you said, you're 20th wheel, and that happens all the time. And it happens, people mess it up, so the race speeds up with 3 laps to go, and it gets reshuffled. There's just a lot more moving pieces at the end of a race.
Yeah. One of the things, too, that I think of with this is that a lot of the time when you don't make it to the end of the race, and you see this a lot with P12s where, guys will just sit up and for the last lap, something like that. It's not necessarily just like a lack of fitness. It could be. But a lot of the time, like you said, it's just like that one wrong chess move that you did. And it's just your chance at winning is one chance at winning. And that option just simply isn't playable anymore. You can't play that card.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of like you said, you have one card. And this is how you're going to be able to play it to be able to win this race.
Yeah.
And everything has to work out just like that in order for that to happen.
Another thing you said is that in the last lap, we alluded to it before, if I'm 20th wheel, I'm still like, I'm in it. Right?
Yeah,
I still can
exactly.
do it.
Right.
But in the other races, you're 20th wheel, so I'm going to do P12 races. I'm just sitting up because I'm not going to be able to move up.
Right.
And I don't want to be caught in a crash.
Sprint for 17th and crash.
Yeah, it
You
would
know
get
what
a
I mean?
broken collarbone.
Yeah.
So either I'm getting points or I'm getting
Right.
I'm 35th out of 37.
The riders are really, I feel like maybe aggressive is the wrong word, but I'll use that word. But they're not
think it's the
dangerous.
right word.
But they're not dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Like in the
There's
they
a lot of
can be.
crashes.
They can be. But what I'm getting at here is that riders' contact is more present and more dealt with. Whereas, like if you're in a Cat 5 race and somebody like bumps shoulders, it's like this Red Sea parts.
Stop the race.
Stop the race. Like, you
Even
know?
in Masters 1, 2, 3, I feel it's like more gentleman racing.
Yeah.
Where but how does it change in the P12, Pete?
Yeah, the way you get through people is by moving them out of the way, right?
I remember that
Don't
video
do this,
with
everyone.
I remember that video with that like a lot of people were upset about with Willie Myers from the Age
the
24 team because he was pushing his head off the other shoulder because he was fighting for a wheel. I don't think that was out of line.
No,
He was just leaning with
suppose
his
Is that
head.
against the rules?
If you don't take your hands off the handlebars, I think it's okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and he wasn't like cracking somebody's
Yeah, it
skull
wasn't
with
even
his
that
head or
aggressive.
something.
Like
No.
Willie's was kind of just like scooting. If you scoot someone off the wheel and they're 8 inches off the line,
Yep.
like all of a sudden he's doing 100 more watts to go that 35 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And even if it's only 3 or 4 seconds, like that's probably enough that Willie's going to get his handlebars in front of him, and that guy's not in the mix anymore.
We'll try to find that video and put it in the forum.
It's on
post.
Jeff Linder's. I forget. Willie won the one, but it's on NorCal Cycling.
Yeah. Well, so we'll link to that video there, but that's like commonplace though, right?
Yeah, and not that it's that kind of like more aggressive behavior or
Forceful.
I was gonna say like enthusiasm, but a lot of shoulder touching and a lot of hip touching where. The spaces in the P12 race are just less, right? There's less kind of overall space because there's usually the fields are a decent size and there's just more people.
And they're more comfortable with that too.
And they're more comfortable. So you just end up turning and running into people, like bouncing off of people a little more.
They're all fighting too for a tighter spot.
And if that kind of scares you, if you get the heebie-jeebies when someone's touching you going 35 miles an hour and you go to the back like the dude who bumped your hip is happier.
Kind of wider elbows when you go through,
Sure.
so you kind of push people away.
We have something on here on the notes, but Nate, are you sure you want to cover this? Because this is possibly what we would be talking about could be flipping over your card, so to speak.
Highlight it.
Because whenever we talk about whenever we talk about like what we're gonna do at a race, and then we show up at the race in our region, Nate and I were marked.
Yeah, but in P12, like if you're marking me, you're losing the race.
That's a good point. Yeah.
There's so many people that have
Yeah.
Either the same size with everybody's more fit than me, right? So, but here's my only chance to get points in the P12, and I do want to get a Cat 1 upgrade.
Yeah.
First flat races, obviously. That should go without saying.
Right, yeah. Pick profiles that match you.
Yep.
Horses for courses.
Then for me,
Nice.
I need to be in a breakaway, and I need to be in a breakaway with the established teams there, because when that happens, the field can just shut down.
You're protected, kind of.
And if you're the opposite, I don't want to drive 3 hours to a California race, miss the breakaway where it's Tayroon, Mike Spikes, Cliff Bar. What's another big team down there?
I don't know.
H24.
H24. They don't really do many crits, but yeah, it could be them too.
Yeah.
Actually, now it's Mark Pro.
Mark Pro, maybe? Yeah, I'm
anyways,
sorry.
whatever their
I'm
name
sorry,
is.
Phil. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
If they're there, like then all these one persons, they have to work together like solo riders to catch
It never happens.
a bunch of hugely committed, strong people.
Yeah.
So Pete, like, what do you think? Like, how often should I try to get in this breakaway and this other rider? If you're a solo rider and you have a team, is a breakaway the best way to try to win?
I
if
think
you're not
so.
a sprinter?
Yeah. Sprinting is hard, right? If you want to really double down and become a sprinter, like we can do it. But
We could try that one year.
we actually did. You can see the video.
No, I don't practice it. We could try
No,
it
I
one
know,
day.
but yeah, it's
Marcel Kittle it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that you treat the race so much differently if you're going to be a sprinter. You want the armchair ride for 50 minutes, or so you have to race it so differently that if you want to be a sprinter, you have to be full in and be a sprinter. And if you're not going to be a sprinter, you're pretty much going to win by being in a breakaway. And that's the first decision you make when you get to the race. You can't. With the guys who are fast sprinters, if you cover a handful of moves just to see and then try to sprint, you lose, right?
Yeah.
Because the other people are resting.
Go.
So I think with most of our courses lend themselves to breakaways of like five-ish riders, 5 committed riders, with teams represented, and really the strong guys, as long as 1 or 2 strong guys are in it to make the difference, to actually push it to get the gap of 20 seconds. We always talk about maintaining the gap's not that hard. So it's getting the gap and actually getting 20 or 25 seconds. And if you have 5 people in the break, you're pretty much guaranteed points. So then you just work, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of a nice thing in one respect. That is a benefit. That's seeing a silver lining of not having a team, is if you're with that breakaway, that sort of a thing. If you're with like a really marked team, people are going to want to, make sure that they send a lot of other people with you, kind of drag you back, that sort of thing. But you can kind of be a Trojan horse, so to speak, and sneak in with the group a bit. So
Yeah, so for everybody, if you're racing with me and we're in a breakaway, y'all know I can't sprint. And though I can put out, I'm a good draft and I can put out high watts for a long time.
don't kick him out.
Well, no, just, let's commit and let's
Sure.
do this, and you'll beat me at the end.
Yeah.
And if I get 1 point, what I got to do 35 of those races to get enough points.
Such a very sad outlook.
No.
Hopefully I can be one of you in the sprint. Maybe one of you overcommits. But, you have a high likelihood of beating me at the end. But we also have a higher likelihood of sticking. One thing that's too different, this is a little local racing, but I think this happens a lot with other
For
teams.
sure.
is that we have a powerhouse team, Mike's Bikes right now, and they just got Jeff Linder from Tayroon.
They got some guys from like Illuminate. They got a really
Yeah.
fast junior that was winning, I think, P1-2 races last year.
But
And
for sprinters, they have Matt
Matt Chatleong.
he's good.
Jeff Linder. So they're like 1-2 in a lot of these P1-2 races.
Yeah, Garrett's on Mike's Bikes, and he's another super fast sprinter. I mean,
Chris Reichert, Roman.
all
of them.
They just pick all the fast people.
They have a lot of ways to win.
They bought all the wins,
They
basically.
Yankeed it.
Yeah. Exactly. They Yankeed it.
But you had a good, interesting thing to say that about they sometimes look put people in the breakaway and not work. So,
Yeah.
so talk about this strategy, because this is great strategy, although frustrating for everyone racing against them.
So they have such a good track record with their sprinters. I mean, they get mostly first, but first or second in all the races.
They could get 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
in a lot of these.
Exactly. And so it's not worth it for them to put any eggs in the breakaway basket, except for getting a rider up there and then having him sit on. And I won't say they do it all the time, but more often than not,
It's a clever move.
Yeah.
Because then
Yeah.
they don't have to work and they don't have to push the pace.
And they'll either shut down the breakaway or have a completely fresh person for the end.
Yeah.
Which, right?
It's what you should do.
If you have 3, I mean, I won't always have 3, but you have 3 strong sprinters, and they have so many people each race that they could do a lead out, and you get somebody in the break, and they just sit on the whole time for 40
they
minutes
have
as everyone's going hard.
Two extremely good cards to play right there. And when one fails, the other's just better. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a really good spot to be in.
Yeah, you have an 80% chance in the breakaway, and you have a 95% chance in the sprint. You're like, yeah, I'll run those odds,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
Well,
it turns out teams are good. Weird.
So how would you counter that if you're in the breakaway with somebody who is just sitting on?
Yeah, it actually happened at Land Park last year. He was sitting on, and we got fairly established, and actually about 15 minutes in, he started attacking the breakaway, right? Like, I think we were getting a big enough gap that it was more or less up to him to kind of destroy the breakaway. So he started attacking the breakaway and getting rid of both the weaker riders, but attacking the stronger riders. And so what ended up happening is we started countering him, the remaining strong guys. But it's like, you're punching holes in your boat. Like, you're taking the breakaway, which was your only chance of success, and
throwing people over.
Yeah. And it's like, well, like
Crazy.
we have to get rid of him for it to work. And of course, we got brought back. But I think what I would do is try to coax him into working. Be like, hey, I don't mind. We'll sit up. But if you pull through, you don't have to pull. Just rotate. Like, that's okay. Like,
Sure.
that saves
just
a bunch of energy.
give us more time
Yeah.
to rest in between efforts. You,
Or if
you
we
don't
just
have to
say-
go crazy
and he'll
fast.
say
Sorry.
no.
Yeah.
And then usually I think if the breakaway's big enough, if it's 3 guys, I would just go back to the field and try again. And if it's 5 guys, 6 guys, I would get halfway through the race, and if it's looking probable and the guy's not attacking you, or whoever it is isn't attacking you, you got to figure out a way to get rid of them.
It's like that quote, some men just want to see the world burn. Right? And you got to be the first one to say that.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be okay with the boat failing too in that regard, right? And then you've been pulling that plug.
Yeah. And
Because if you do that first, many times that's going to be better if you find yourself in that situation where it's not going to work out, because otherwise you'll end up wasting energy on a hope that isn't likely to happen.
And another good thing is if they only have one person covering moves, sometimes they only have 1 or 2 people covering moves. Time it so that you get the more tired one.
Yeah.
Right? Like they've been doing a lot of work for the whole race, and then you can kind of put a little more pressure in the situation. And if they're on the back foot just slightly, then you really lean into them and you start attacking that rider, and they'll either sit on other people and make them cover, and maybe you have a new breakaway, right? And so it's hard though. It's a terrible. I raced collegiate racing too, and UC Davis used to do this to us all the time. The same. They would fire someone off the front 5 seconds into the race, one of the strongest riders, solo breakaway on a road race, and nobody would chase. And then they would have 6 of the other strongest riders sitting 2nd through 8th wheel, just waiting.
Nice.
And,
Very kind of them.
Mike's Bikes did this to me in Elite 3.
Yep.
It'll be really interesting this year with the road races.
Watch the videos.
It'll be everybody versus Mike's Bikes at this point.
Oh, for road races?
Because I feel like they've gotten enough people that it's just going to be like everyone's going to have to like form strange alliances.
Locally.
Yeah, locally.
Nationally, they're going to have a competition still.
Oh,
And
of course.
those would be super fun to watch.
I'm just talking locally.
Yeah, locally they got a lot of people.
Nationally, I mean, they even have Max Corus back, the guy that beat Justin Rossi in the chase, which, by the way, that video now has over 1 million views, which is pretty awesome. You can check it out. It was Justin on our YouTube channel, The Chase, if you look it up. And it's Justin Rossi's attempt to better his second place at Nationals and how he went absolutely all in. It's a really cool story to see. But they have a really strong team. They're likely to get one. I mean, if they don't get one national championship this year, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, they blew
Because they have strong Masters racers too.
I would say, I bet they can win a Masters title. I think Legion got more strong riders than Mike's Bikes did.
Yeah, they're basically doing the same thing at a different level.
So
yeah,
I think the whole racing scene will be pretty interesting this year. We lost some races too, so it'll actually make more people show up to the races that that are there. And Nate will be at the races.
When's Tulsa, Pete?
Second weekend in June, like June 11th, 12th, 13th, 13th, 14th, 15th or something.
Go. That could be a good way to build up for nationals, maybe.
Wait, Tulsa Tough?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second. So,
Sorry, I'm getting distracted.
First, for Bogdan to try to how can you do it? Because we just kind of laid out that P12s could be extremely hard, but luckily there are Cat 2 only stage races.
Yes,
and Cat 2 only stage races could still have the same tactics. So just be aware of that. But some of those P1 people who are just on the next level won't be in there.
Yeah.
So how it works to go from Cat 2 to Cat 1, you need 35 points. You can get 10 of those from a local race series or Masters racing. But then you got to get the other 25 by yourself.
Yep.
The good thing is for stage races, you can get a max of 20 points in a weekend. And my strategy is we're not going to name the stage races I'm going to go to. Okay?
Awesome. I was just going to say, let's try to keep lids on things.
Because I don't want people, just going against us or whatever. It's annoying. Just let me win, guys. Is to find Cat 2 only stage races. And if you know of any Cat 2 stage races only, please put them in the forum post for this episode. What episode is this?
235.
235. And flat TTs. And if it's a stage race, time-based, sometimes if you can do the flat TT, you pretty much win. Then you just have to cover and make sure you don't open up a big gap.
Sure.
And then I'm going to do some P12 crits and skip the Masters field because all year I've raced always more than one race in a day, and it is hard.
And put all your eggs in one basket too.
Exactly.
Right?
And try to get those 10 points from our weekly Wheelman series. I've won those locally, and especially with you two bros' help. We are the Mike's Bikes.
Yeah, we are.
Locally, there's Bellarino and stuff.
They're strong too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It can go either way.
They're really strong.
Depending on tactics and stuff. So, and then Pete, you said sometimes 2 races are scored separately?
Yeah, and that's partially how I got my one upgrade, doing some Cat 2 only races, or Cat 2s are scored separately where you would do...
you race amongst the P1?
Yeah, and they kind of pull the 2s out of it, and we didn't do enough research, so I won't spit out any, but there are races that does exist, so if you can find those where Cat 2s are scored separately...
that's amazing.
Because that's up to the race organizer to do that.
Yeah. If you get in a breakaway with a bunch of 1s and you're a 2,
you're set.
You're set.
Won.
Like, my first 1, 2, 3 race, I thought, we talked about this, I thought that's how it was scored. It was actually a 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
And I was in a breakaway with Masters people.
Yeah.
And I thought, hey, I'm in the first 4. There's only 1s and 2s in this breakaway.
We got it. Yeah.
And then I didn't contest the sprint, and then I was like, nope, you're 6th place, no points. I was like, Anyways, the other kind of thing you could do is there are Cat 2 crit series, which I think he's going to do, but can we just go? Do we have enough time? Can we get through these?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, 1, Tour of America's Dairyland. That's like 10 days?
11 days.
11 days.
There's one or two road races, but road racing being in quotes.
Got it. Are they kind of like circuit races almost?
Circuit races, or sometimes they do it on a road race course. So it's like 10-mile loops or less, 5-mile loops, stuff like that. But it's all crit racers. It's a crit race.
Nice.
Less climbing?
Less climbing. There's a couple hilly days, but I always was fine in those races. Okay. You also get you can pick and choose. So if you have a bad day, just pull out, or you don't feel good, ride easy for the first half, and then
just
pull
jump
out.
Back in.
Yeah, and you can pick and choose your days that you want to do well in.
You said this is this your favorite race?
It's probably my favorite race series. It's so fun. All the towns are really into it. It's really well done. There's good prizes. There's good crowds. There's good racers. It's always pretty safe. And it's easy to drive through. They're all within an hour or two of Milwaukee. So, or one of whichever race you pick as your home base, they're all close.
Interesting.
Intelligentsia Cup. Oh wait, where is Tour America's Daily first?
It's in Wisconsin, around Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And sorry, we're talking about U.S. races.
Around that region.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Intelligentsia Cup.
I actually haven't done this one, but other people, it's Jeff Linder did it. You can watch his videos. I think he did a video for everyone.
Yeah. It's like West Chicago, and it looks scary. It looks crashy and aggressive.
The courses look a little bit hairier to me on that one, and I think the people are more aggressive, like you said.
Yeah.
So remember from last year, he was even saying these people are way aggressive, more aggressive than Northern California.
Yep.
Gateway Cup.
Gateway's in St. Louis. It's at the end of the year. It's really it's another one where the town is super behind it. I think too. I don't know. We should look at the race flyer, and races change every year. Just because they did something last year doesn't mean they'll do it next year. But it's really good to kind of, if you can hang at a real national level P12 crit, you go back to your normal regional crit.
It's going to feel really easy.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Just a mental shift.
Yeah, just a mental shift, and you just realize what you're capable of doing. I remember we did Tulsa. Well, Tulsa's the next one, but where you start and you pretty much go till your eyes bleed for the first 10 minutes, and then it settles down and you only go 95% of your eyes bleeding, and then you come back to California and everybody eases off the line and you're like sprinting, and when you look up 10 seconds of the race and you're already 50 feet off the front, and you're like, oh yeah, we're back in the normal racing.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah.
Tulsa Tough.
Tulsa Tough. That one's hard. I think we always say it's kind of like the most condensed, the most best riders all come to Tulsa.
Yeah.
And so it's really stacked. There is it's a P1 field and a 1-2 field. So if you feel confident in your fitness, you're good at hilly technical crits. It's a great,
I feel like that would be a great one for John, but not for me.
Yeah.
John's hilly, punchy, technical.
So bad.
You would like it. It's
I
fun.
want to go so bad. It looks awesome.
Usually it rains.
It's perfect. Makes it even better.
Yeah, that's like, this is all things for John.
This is great. Yeah.
And you'd be a 3.
Yeah, and they do. I think they do a 3 only race. At least they did last year. I watched it on the live stream on Flow Sports.
Yeah, I would. So. Tulsa Tough is one almost everybody should do once.
Yeah, and the crowds look
cool.
amazing. Looks awesome.
We can do it once here.
Just get dropped once.
What about
one lap?
And so these are just like these. They have multiple races all in like 1 week, right?
Yeah, series racing.
Yeah. One other one that I want to do, and I know it's not part of this though, is Boise Twilight Crit. Even though that one's pan flat, but
that looks like a good one for me.
I think you should definitely do it.
Pan flat, not technical corners.
Yep.
And you can do the 1-2-3 race. Like the one
With you?
Yeah. Well.
Oh yeah, you got. What'd you get? We got a video of this.
I got second.
You can check out the video.
It is an awesome race because we have the USA Crits footage from above too.
Thank you, USA Crits.
Yeah, so it's a whole nother level.
It's really cool.
I wish I would have been that regular with you. I watched it. I'm like, oh, you're just dying too.
Yeah, you would have smoked me.
No, it would have been awesome though.
Yeah, and I'm gonna try to do the P1 race this year. I mean that's like my favorite race, so I really want to be fast and good.
Would you do both?
Make the roster, right?
I don't think so. I have to make the roster. I have to be one of the 6 fastest guys on the race.
You should use Plan Builder.
I am. I'm a week and a half in because I put it on my plan before everybody else did.
Ooh, sneaky Pete. But it's cool. It's exciting. It makes me want to race some crits right now. We're going to go into the last one for today, and then we're going to cover some live questions that you've submitted. So this one, we'll just go through this one pretty quick. But basically, it says, I'm a Trainer Road user because of the podcast. You guys are great. I've been really pleased with the product. This is from Johnny, by the way. My wife asked me what I wanted for Christmas. My first thought was Envy Wheels. No, Avenge. Then I remembered she should buy my gift from the same bank account that I use. So he says, so I thought of other useful cycling things. I remember you talking about body fat scales. I think the discussion was precision rather than accuracy, or talking about quality fans. I remember Chad saying it looked like that they dry the carpet with, or sleep monitoring watches. I know I could search the forum and find the brands you could recommend for each of those product categories, but I wonder if you might do a holiday buying guide of sorts, maybe talk about various ideas and various price ranges, specifically if a family member or friend who wasn't a cycling nerd, and I mean that very complimentary, wanted to buy you something that wasn't a gift card, what would you recommend? So I guess first things first on the fan, it's the Lasco Performance Series. If you just look up Lasco Performance Series, you'll see a bunch of different options that are all good options. I've used the small gray one, the big gray one, the small yellow one, and they're all fine in different cases. And then for the body fat scan, we've used Tanita scales. The BF680W is pretty cheap. I think it's like $40, $50, somewhere around there. And then they have like other ones that have like Ironman certified, but they function the same. So the BF680W, I think, is the cheapest one. I have the Garmin Index at home, and it syncs with Garmin Connect, which is really nice. So then I just have a log of my data, which is handy to have. So that's kind of what's that on there. And then as far as like a sleep monitoring watch, I don't really have one that I would recommend that really, I mean, none of them give me any sort of data point that influences my training. So I don't think I'd recommend one in particular. But what other things, Nate, would you say for cyclists?
Okay, I've talked about some of these before, but a Yeti 1 gallon jug for races that you drive to. These are like, it's hard to buy things for people, but this is one of the things you probably wouldn't normally buy for yourself, but because it's expensive. How much is this thing? Like $100 or something like that?
They're expensive.
It is $130.
Yeah.
For a jug of water. But yeah, the water is ice cold.
And it stays ice cold.
Yeah, and having it at a race, like either after the race or to fill your bottles up, or if you do more than one races, to have ice cold water that you can put ice in.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's very, very nice.
So good. And you can also go with other brands other than Yeti. There's like Arctic.
Yeah, for half the price probably.
Yeah. Hydro Flask even.
But you're saving money on buying ice and the 1 gallon of jug of water that you buy, or you fill up your bottles and you have no water in your car.
And then it gets hot and you come back to it. And also you're buying plastic you're just going to throw away.
So I have this in my car in Northern California weather in the summer where it's like 100 degrees, still come back and it's ice cold. So that's a luxury. The Silica Travel Torque Wrench, I really like this. You like another one from Feedback Sports?
Feedback Sports, yeah. They function a bit differently, but they get the same job done.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is having a torque wrench with all the little bits that's very small. This one's designed to be able to put in your jersey pocket. I put it in my like rain bag that I always have. So then I always have tools with a torque wrench because I need it.
Yeah, now you need it.
Now I need it. I did not have this one before.
Nate checks his bolts now.
Yeah. And then for a little less expensive, Super Kaz bar tape. I just love that bar tape.
Yeah.
I've got some bikes that don't have it, and I just can't wait until I put the other stuff on.
It's
sticky
nice
and
grippy.
soft. Yeah, and I like the Super Cush.
Yep.
Super Cush. I think it's Super Cush.
Super Kaz, Super Cush.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Super.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's
Thanks.
those are
people that make weird brand names that are hard to.
So it's like 130. The Silica's like what 100, and then the Super Kaz is like $40, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff. What would you add, Pete?
The only one that I said that really makes a difference is a bike fit from a respected fitter.
Which it can be hard to find.
Which can be hard to find. You might have to travel. I do think that that's probably the single biggest change I made to my whole cycling career was getting a real bike fit. And then I changed too, so you kind of have to keep on it.
Adjusting it.
I've done it a couple different ones. I've done JD Bergman in Sports Basement in Oakland. He's done a good one, and Stefan Hoffman on both are on Team Cliff Bar, so that kind of helps. But he lives in Santa Cruz, and actually Zach Allison does them in Fort Collins also. I think just having someone who isn't applying a template to you and making your angles okay, but who talks about what kind of racing you want to do, kind of who you are as a person, and what kind of bike you're doing, especially if they're not selling you a bike, it just changes the way you feel on the bike. I think every time you sit on your bike, you should go, I get to sit on my bike now, and it feels good.
Yep.
If it doesn't feel that way,
get a fit.
Try it out.
Another one?
Oh, yeah, one more. Race tires that you only use for racing.
You should take this advice, Pete. I think Pete got like a flat like 6 times last year on the way to crits. Like weekly crits, and then ended up being late or something like that.
It was. So that's. I rode my training wheels to the crit.
Yeah.
And then flatted. Yeah. Anyways, but I do have 2 sets of wheels. I have race wheels and training wheels. My race wheels always have very nice like race tires on them with like less than 100 or 200 miles.
What do you mean by race tires? They're the same tires that you would use probably, or maybe not. They just to be like faster rolling.
Faster rolling. Everybody has their different preferences, but ones that are new, grippy tires make a difference. Like
Yeah,
the
they do.
difference of you cornering and stopping is all due to your tires. So
Yes.
don't chance it.
Nate, you had another one?
Oh yeah. So for triathletes, buying somebody an optimized chain.
Yeah.
So if you're a crit racer, it's tough because you might be racing 25 times a year, and then like the optimized chain taking on and off, you're using quick links or you're reusing them, and you can have a big issue.
Yeah, it's just
that's
not
not
worth
cool. But if you're a triathlete and you have 1 to 2 races a year, then it
Yeah.
makes sense. And there's a few companies that do it, but you can look it up. But you can do an optimized chain for somebody and put it on a week before your race. It's not gonna go away, but
lose all the watts.
yeah, but you want to make
exactly.
sure, like we had in Kona before, like
Sure.
the chain length is right, so you can shift. Like everything's working okay. Like the index is set up because with the wax chain, you also want to like get a little bit of that wax off
Sure.
when you're first doing it to really get it optimized. And I'm not sure if some of these companies run it a little bit before, but I have it right now, a freshly waxed chain on my trainer, and after one 90-minute ride, there's like just tons of little flakes down
Of wax
Yeah,
all over the
exactly.
place below it.
From the outside and stuff coming off, and it shifts better after it kind of gets worn in for the first 10 or 15 minutes. But that's a cool. I mean, they're like $100, but they can take 5. Some people probably 10 watts based on how bad your chain was before.
Yeah.
And just because you lube your chain every week
Doesn't
not
mean that
mean
it's fast.
It's not the same.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to get detailed on this one really quick, but go through it quickly. Things that have changed bike ownership and training for me is a digital shock pump. Like, it's more expensive, and I know anytime you get a bike, it usually comes with like a normal analog gauge shock pump. But once you get a digital one, it makes a huge difference because half a PSI when you're talking about suspension makes a really big difference. So when you're trying to guess with the needle, it's just not best. So get a digital shock pump. It's the Fox has one, RockShox has one. There are other companies that have them. They all look exactly the same. So I don't know what company makes it, but it's all the same digital shock pump, and it works great. The KOM cycling sealant injector, which I think the guy that runs KOM cycling is a listener to the podcast, so shout out. But this is an awesome little tool that has made tubeless setup way easier for me, which is just basically, it's you take out your valve core and then you put this hose all the way down inside your tire, and then you inject the sealant rather than just injecting it over the top, because then everything gets clogged really quickly with your valve stem. And clogged valve stems, I mean, you never get an accurate reading on tire pressure. Takes forever to inflate things. Sometimes they don't inflate. Then they always leak. It's rough.
And you put the right amount of sealant in. There's a lot of benefits. It's a
And it's
great
less
tool.
messy.
Less messy.
It's just a handy thing to have. And I guess alongside that too is whether you get a small reservoir for tubeless, and we'll get into this in a bit, but whether you get a separate reservoir that you pump up and use to slam tubeless tires onto the bead, or an air compressor or a pump with it built in, something like that is really helpful if somebody's doing a lot of tubeless tires. Then a Feedback Sports, the work stand that they have, and I think I have the Elite one, I think it's called, the Pro Elite. That one just has a button that you press, and when you press the button, it releases your bike. There's no like
Big old thing to pull.
big old thing to pull. There's no like thing you have to unwind. It's so handy.
Feedback Sports also has a truing stand, but the cool part about it is it's truing for disc
Wheels.
disc wheels. So
So
that
you can true the rotors on the
yes,
disc.
which is to me a rubbing rotor is the most annoying thing,
It's the worst.
and it's pretty small, which is nice.
Yep. So their work stand's really nice, and it comes with a bag that you can like. I took it to nationals, for example, so I just checked it, and it's got a bag made for that that's all padded, which is cool. And then they have a toolkit, and I think they're like it's like their pro level toolkit or whatever. It's pricey, but I promise you, if you get that for the person that is a cyclist in your life, they'll be like, "Thank you so much," because maybe 3 times a year I reach for a tool outside of that when I'm working on my bike. And that's like when I'm pressing bottom bracket bearings or something, right?
Yeah.
So it's very rare. So, and the cool part is if you get the work stand and that is made to hang on the work stand, and it's just so easy. Makes everything great. Now, things I want, there are just 3 of them. A 350 watt FTP.
Me too,
Yeah. Santa, please be kind. I'm going to get a lot of flack for this one. People are going to hate me for this one, but I want the Envy air pressure station
What is
really
that?
badly. So Tucker will put up a link in the forum for this, but it's basically, so this can mount to a wall or mount to a surface. And It is an inflation management tool, basically.
Yes.
If that was such a thing. You basically can set favorites. So it's a digital gauge and it's a governor for a compressor. So you have to buy a compressor separately from this, and I know it's really expensive. But you buy a compressor separately or have some sort of cylinder of air that's charged, whatever you want to use.
Charged cylinder also works, right?
And then you basically just dial in the digital pressure you want. So let's say you want 23.5 PSI. You go 23.5 PSI, and then it's got a really easy and awesome Presta and Schrader lock-on thing, not a weird lever that'll be hard to fit in. Put it on there, and then you just press go, and then it inflates perfectly for you to that pressure. And it has a tubeless button, so you can hit the tubeless button, it'll just slam it onto the tire for you. And then you can save different bikes. You can save it in memory. Yeah. So you can have like your road bike is always 72 PSI, then your mountain bike is always 21 PSI, and you never have to think about anything. You just hook it up and hit the button and it's
accurate.
done. Yes, and it's accurate.
Very accurate.
It's amazing. It's also $750.
But
it's amazing. And once you use it, you just don't want to not use it. And we made the mistake of using it.
We
now
did
we
that.
just
I
don't.
want one too.
we used it at Kona. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I also want the Cybertruck,
We're just throwing gas on fires. Yeah.
which I'm sure people will. It's controversial, but I think it looks awesome, and it's for a
think so,
cycling
too.
truck. Ooh, I could put my my bike inside the bed.
Yep. And
Lock
it's
it
secure.
up.
That's what I do with. Yeah. Oh,
I can
shouldn't
lean
say
it
that,
against
but-
it, not worry about scratching. But with the NV air pressure stations, if I bring it up, I'm going to mount that thing inside of it because it has its own air compressor built in. I'm going to have a line at my truck of people going like, "Can I use it?" And yes, you can all use it.
Yes.
Just come on up, and I should set up trainers in that and just be the most popular person. And like coffee and tacos.
Yeah.
Oh, you'd
And
be
just
set.
jugs of cold water.
Yeah.
Yeti jug.
Man, that's a lot of reason to hate.
Have a whole station. But I think it's small enough where, depending on
It's
how I
super
can
small.
mount it, I can mount it in there where it's not going to get in the way.
Yeah.
But then anywhere I go, which I'm always have my car, at least
Yeah.
at the beginning of the ride when I start a bike ride, unless I'm traveling,
Yeah.
I'm going to have my perfect air pressure.
Oh, it'd be so
gonna be nice.
It'd be an awesome setup. So those are the things. And then also the last thing, I want to somehow avoid getting sick for the next 8 months. So
Move out from your house with your son.
And don't eat any more spinach.
I was mostly better. Got food poisoning. It was terrible. And then now I think it broke me down again and I'm sick again.
We went long.
We did. Let's just cover a couple.
Cool.
Shall we?
Your choice.
So, okay. Let's look at this. We actually talked about that one on our previous episode. Gavin says, in Utah, where I live, and many big cities, the winter air quality is really bad. Does the poor air quality affect Does poor air quality affect training, and would an air filter be beneficial?
I don't know about training, but we do know for like mortality rate. So yes, air filter.
Yeah,
definitely.
100%. Especially
Yeah.
in Salt Lake, the air quality is terrible.
It's
in
really
that
Yeah,
city.
because they get an inversion, right?
Yeah, they get an inversion because of the Great Salt Lake. It just compounds and it just doesn't leave.
Yeah, so it's a good idea.
Yeah, we did a study on ozone too, or we didn't do a study. We shared results from a study on ozone and human performance. If you look up Ask a Cycling Coach podcast ozone, I'm sure you'll be able to find it.
I thought you were going to say the number. I was like, whoa,
that would be
you are a
amazing.
database.
That would be amazing. I wish. That one, we looked into that, and I believe the findings that we found, that they weren't necessarily conclusive in terms of performance detriment, but absolutely in terms of health effects, they are there. So it's not worth risking it for sure. This is a great one. Where in a climb should I put more power in for my best time, or should I have even power? This is like the most common question in terms of like race pacing that we get for sure, and we get this one quite a lot. Best bike split is always interesting to look at, but if it's a short climb, which Ryan Cooper from Best Bike Split has said that like it's tough to kind of assimilate that when you're talking about like a short climb, but like, and I mean like a 30-second climb or like 1 minute climb or something. But for longer, more steady climbs, it can be a really good idea. And in almost every case, it suggests to pace things more evenly than you probably want to.
And it's going to be a factor on if this is for Strava or this is in a race. Because in a race, it's probably not going to be even pacing. Like the smaller guys, the steeper it gets, you're going to punch and drop everybody else.
Yeah.
Or the better watt per kg people. Athletes, not guys. Got to get over that. But in general, if wind resistance is not playing a factor at the lower speed, so you're not going, say you're going 10 miles per hour and less, the even pacing is what you want, because instead of doing over-unders or these like like these cross style things where you're going really hard then easy, really hard then easy, you're gonna be able to put out more average watts at a sustained effort. And that's why it is. And if you are only overcoming rolling resistance and gravity, and you don't have a big impact for wind resistance, that is why putting out just average watts is best.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that's how I usually pace my like hill climb TTs. Is much more even than most people, and it almost always ends up working out well. And especially if this isn't a stage race and you have like a hill climb TT in the middle, if you're constantly just spiking and going over and over and over, that's going to probably cause more wear on your system for the next day. So
That too, yeah.
you know, so it's a good thing to keep in mind for sure. Okay, let's do one more question. Looks like this says from Andrew, says this one's for Pete. Is the USA Crits scene growing in 2020, and what are your top 3 must-do events?
Yeah, USA Crits got some more backing, and it's kind of sweet because like we have talked about, some races are going away. We were all excited to do some stage racing this spring, and San Dimas and Chico Stage Race aren't happening.
They aren't happening. It's
and
so sad.
That's always a good lead-in. But USA Crits is growing, which is nice. Top 3 must-do events. Boise's my favorite race for sure. We talk about it all the time. It's cool. Our director is from there. It's kind of like our home race.
The city's super into it, and it's like right in the heart of the city.
You go in front of the Capitol building. Like the start-finish line is at the Capitol building.
Yeah.
So
and it's a really walkable city too. So there's a lot of people, and it's cool.
Yeah, they dropped it right in the center of where you walk around and spend your time anyways. So it's perfect. The town's really behind it. That's a good course for me. That helps too.
What you're about to get is all the flat, fast crits in America.
Yeah. Well,
it's also entirily downhill the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
The parking garage crit.
Yeah.
We do like San Rafael. I love that it's dark and fast and scary. That race makes you feel alive.
Yeah. Nate looked ill right there. Yeah.
Nate stayed up, right? He would have won.
I
watched the video.
Yeah.
I don't know about winning, but
you would have.
I was in a good position.
Yeah, you would have won
to do well.
I think you don't say you would have won, but we can say you would have won. How about that? Yeah.
Yeah, and then honestly, they're all really fun. If you get the chance to go to any USA Crits race, do it. Even if you're racing a lower category, stick around and watch. I think the live stream, I shouldn't say, I think there's going to be more live streams that are available to the public for less cost or no cost.
Also, I don't know if this is somehow happening like illegally, but I pay for Flow Sports. That's like that subscription to watch a bunch of cycling races, and I could see USA Crit stuff. So
all right, good to know.
They must have had some sort of agreement, or I don't know what was happening.
It's an agreement.
Yeah, I hope I didn't just out something, but but yeah, because that was really fun to watch last year.
And
for me,
fun to watch while you're training.
Oh, it's
on the
awesome.
trainer.
And for me, Tulsa absolutely had like the highest energy. Salt Lake actually had a good amount of energy to it too. It was just a little hard to follow maybe with the camera angles, but that one next year I think actually falls at a good date for me because Nationals is happening so early. So I might go like on a crit tour after Nationals.
Can I come?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Can I come?
Boise, Salt Lake.
Yeah.
And then there's one other that would be after Nationals, but Tulsa is
Littleton
before.
is also another good one.
It's Littleton.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where is that?
Colorado.
That's South Denver. It's a south suburb of Denver. It's cool. It has some long straights, so you go like 35, 36, 40 miles an hour into
the camera just like would stay for like 2 or 3 minutes on like one stretch as the riders would just get closer and closer and closer. So,
yeah, Littleton's another home race for us, right? We have a pretty big like greater front range contingent, so it's racing in front of your friends and family is the best.
Looks awesome.
One last thing,
I
should put in the forum. For you Australians, I'm going to be in Australia the week of. Let's see, I'm going to land on Thursday, March 5th in Sydney, and there's that like 6th, 7th, 8th. I have an opportunity to race. So if there's any crits down there, and you should, if you listen, you know what kind of crits I like. If it's just like hilly or like road races, like don't do it. Yeah. But I would love to do some races. So if you post any in there or just some rides, that would be fun. And I will talk about it more when we get closer. But
yeah, that'd be cool. Australians seem fast to me.
I know.
I don't know if it's just the accent or what, but they all seem fast.
I want to do some. We talked about this. We're going to do some videos, and the result will either be most likely I'll get smoked. And Americans will say, send a real crit racer like Pete Morris. Or if I do beat anyone, Australians will say, well, that wasn't our premier race.
For sure, yeah,
So come to
for
this
sure.
other. Now you got to come to this
It's
other
a
one.
lose-lose.
I know. And
Yeah.
it's a little bit of home turf. You always want
Yeah, for sure.
to show. So, all the Australians want me just to get destroyed one lap in, which probably will happen.
Yeah, it might happen. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Remember, you can join us live on YouTube, and that's usually every Thursday, 8 a.m. Pacific, and it will be for next week as well. You can ask your questions on there, and then we try to answer as many as we can. We went a little long this week, so we didn't get to a lot of them, but thanks for joining us there. You can also go to YouTube. We post a video every single weekday, whether it's a race analysis clip, whether it's a clip of a previous podcast discussion that we feel like would help make people faster, tons of different stuff. So you can subscribe there and share those videos. It's hugely helpful. Sign up for Trainer Road and check out Plan Builder. It's amazing. It's so much fun to be able to build out like a whole year of training and just see what it would be like. You can test out now and see what would low volume, what would mid, what would high volume be like. What would it be like if I tried to peak for this race versus this race? You can change all that stuff around. It's a ton of fun. So go check it out. And one of the biggest things you can do to help us is to share this podcast. It helps a ton. So thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye. That was your turn.